Welcome to the Freeborn Podcast. I'm here with my very good friend and our special guest today, Adam Newman. We're thankful for you coming out here. I know it's a little hike for you guys coming out to the studio.
Hey, that's nothing compared to the drive you guys probably have to make everywhere you go.
Everywhere we go.
It's your own fault, though.
Yeah, don't cry for me. Never cry for anyone who lives on 4 acres. That's what I say. No, yeah. So anyways, we're very, very happy you're here. And I've been wanting to get you on for a while, but the COVID got you at home for a while. Mm-hmm. How have you guys been coping with all of this?
Well, they let me work from home, and it's been awesome, to say the least. You know, you save all the drive times, and I was driving between offices.
Is anyone going to go back to work to offices after this, or do you think companies are going to keep doing this?
Yeah, our CEO has actually talked about that quite a bit. This is going to change. He really thinks this is going to change the way we do business in the future. So in terms of
because USA, where you work, is completely closed down from what Danny was here last week.
Yeah, right.
And he works in their main office, I guess, normally.
Yep.
But he says it's vacant.
It's basically vacant. Yeah, I think 96% of the workforce is at home now. Really cool technology of how we got there, by the way. So
really?
Really
Can you
cool
talk
stuff.
about it?
Yeah.
Oh, tell me.
We use, if you look at some stuff, there's a couple of technologies, but one of the big ones is called VeloCloud. VeloCloud is a little device that'll sit in between your computer and your router, and basically, so it provides security, and then you basically get a direct connection.
It's encoding everything that's going from your computer to your router.
Yeah, the big thing is we recently moved to VoIP, so voice over IP for all our phones. So you can basically move anyone without having to basically have a hardwired phone. So all of our contact representatives that are talking to our members are using VoIP, and the VeloCloud is allowing them to do it. It's really, really cool.
Wow. Really and so you have, does they give everyone that's working from home one of these? Is that what they do? Or
all of the customer service reps, we use something different, like an IT, or we don't need that kind of sophistication. And it has the security stuff.
Right.
It's just not as high tech for phone calls specifically because we don't need it.
Right.
So yeah, we just have they have some software built into the laptops.
So you see maybe you working from home for the foreseeable future then?
We're definitely working from home through May. That's a mandate. And then I don't know what the future is going to be, but I think the culture has changed where it's acceptable. Before it was everyone in a room and one person online, and so you never really included that person. And everyone had to adapt. Everyone's working from home. I think it's going to change the culture of how everyone does business.
I think so too. What do you think this is going to do to restaurants?
Man,
I mean, are you going to go to a restaurant when they open up? Are they open yet?
Yes.
Yeah, they're semi-open. Yeah, I mean, I wear a mask and.
Well, now.
How do you wear a mask and go to a restaurant? That's what I wonder. Do you have a zipper and you like zip it, eat it, and zip it, or what?
No, it's really ridiculous. You go, you have to wear it when you order, and then they let you take it off to eat, and then you got to put it back on. They'll watch me put it back on with my greasy, nasty hands that I've been touching.
I just went to the bathroom.
First, yeah. I just went to the bathroom. My hands aren't wet because I obviously didn't wash them. And then I'm like, okay, I'm safe now. I put it on, and everybody else around me is safe.
You can't put it in the washing machine because you might need it. So it just gets.
See, I thought when this all happened, well, this is going to change. Restaurants are going to change completely. I think you're going to see a lot of changes, like booths, more like closed-in cubicle.
I see what
stuff.
you're saying.
And my daughter, who works at Texas Roadhouse, says that that's actually what they're thinking of doing. They're actually now thinking of
restructuring everything.
Yeah, like booths. Rebuild the restaurant, and it's going to be like a plexiglass. You'll go into a containment.
What? They hand you your food over the thing.
Through a double vacuum door. Yeah.
Well, doesn't Japan do something like that?
I don't know.
Yeah, they do a lot of different things restaurants where you sit in a.
Well, they do a lot of social distancing stuff always.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you got a ton of people living in entire, very, very small spaces, so they wear masks like every day, all the time.
It's just nature.
It's like culture now.
Yeah.
They see you not wearing a mask, you're weird. Mm-hmm. I refuse to wear masks. I don't wear them. I don't wear them on job sites. I just don't wear them. Well, imagine trying to walk up 4 or 5 flights of stairs, carrying stuff, wearing a mask, breathing through that thing. And then we have to wear safety glasses. And so then your safety glasses are completely fogged up. Yeah, no, it's terrible. I hate this stupid thing. I just don't go to restaurants, and I'll go when they get reasonable again. No, but I mean, who's gonna? I was saying this before, but with Terry when I did the podcast with Terry, but I just don't see restaurants ever going back to business as usual, not for a very long time.
How so?
Even if they want to. I don't know how many people are going to be willing to go to restaurants anymore.
I see what you're saying. Like for the foreseeable future.
I do. Yeah, I mean it'll
Sure.
probably eventually die out. Like, you know, we don't still live under ideas from the 1918 Spanish flu, but I mean, how long do you think it'll last? That people are like, yeah, I don't think I want to go there. And you know, you don't realize, you're like, oh, there'll be people there. There will, but restaurants need to maintain high capacity because their margins are so slim. I mean, restaurant margins are incredibly slim. It's a terrible business to get into.
Right. Yeah, it's unsustainable at 25 or even 50% capacity.
50% is
still
bankruptcy.
unsustainable.
Yeah. And I was saying the other day in a podcast I did here by myself that I think that restaurants like Whataburger are kind of liking this because their drive-thrus are full all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't have to give out free refills. They don't have to ever return an order, get an order taken back.
They've been messing up my orders.
Oh, yeah,
this whole time, and
they can give you
nothing I
anything
can
they
do
want.
about it. Oh yeah, they just
put hairs in it.
Anything. Well, it's like they can just give you any burger or anything. You don't matter what you order. They're going to give you whatever they need to get rid of, I think. Because what are you going to do?
Yeah, you can't,
Go back and get in that long line and drive back?
No way.
No, you're just going to go home and just be happy with what you got. And so I think they're loving it because it's like no cleaning the bathrooms anymore. I mean, how much does that save you? No mopping, sweeping, wiping down the tables.
All the little packets, all the little numbers that people
everything,
steal.
all that.
All that dining experience stuff is
all that is gone. All you got is some people in there cooking burgers and throwing them out the window into your car, and off you go. And then we've been to Popeyes a couple times lately, and they never give us the apple pies we order.
Popeyes. Why are you going to Popeyes?
For apple pie.
Popeyes is the worst.
No, but it has apple pie. Have you ever had a Popeyes apple pie?
I have not had a Popeyes.
It is the best apple pie you can buy.
So you go there just for the apple pies?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, why don't you just get the apple pies?
And they don't give them to me.
Then if you only got the apple pies,
well, then I would know. Then I would know that they didn't give them. They give me an empty bag. I'd be like, "What's this?" I'd probably drive off with that way anyway.
Like, oh, whatever. I mean,
no, it's crazy. The whole thing is crazy.
We went to Raising Cane's. Oh, I don't like Popeyes. We went to Raising Cane's.
Do you like Raising Cane's?
Yes.
Okay, tell me your story, and then I'm going to tell you my story.
The reason why I like them is their food is okay. I love their sauce, and
you mean their ketchup and mayonnaise mix?
It's like Thousand Island.
Yeah. That's ketchup and mayonnaise.
A buddy of mine introduced. Anyways, he's not gonna let me finish.
Go ahead.
No, my buddy of mine introduced it to me when I was in Louisiana because I don't know if it originated there, but it was very popular. This was about 7 or 8 years ago, before they were even close to San Antonio. So I liked it before they even had them here in San Antonio. But what I really like about it is there's the one in Bandera, which is about where we live, Bandera and Huebner. There's the Whataburger there and the Raising Cane's, and they both have 15 car lines. I got through the Raising Cane line in 3 minutes. I timed it.
Well, you know why, right? And this is why I don't like Raising Cane's. They only have one thing. It's a chicken finger restaurant with no flavors. Now, you explain that. It'd be like going to a buffalo wing restaurant, and you're like, okay, what flavors do you have? And they're like, buffalo.
But I only get one flavor when I go to them.
It's good for you, right?
I'm a simple guy. I don't see what the problem is.
I mean, they don't have spicy. They don't have ranch. They don't have any kind of. It's just chicken strips. And you're amazed that they can do it quickly, huh? Like, what are we going to cook today? Chicken strips. Which great. Flavor? The same flavor.
It's so streamlined, though.
It is.
Well, Rebecca and I went to Popeyes last week. And it was just awful. Just the food was horrible.
Yes, it is. Okay. But the pies are fantastic.
So only get the pies.
Yes. Yes.
Order 6
Go to
pies
Cane's, and then with that extra minutes that you save because of how streamlined they are, you go to Popeyes and buy the pies. You spilled it all over you. Yeah, you go there and you get your apple pie, and you'll thank me for this. There is no better apple pie you can buy. Now, you can make a better apple pie.
Sure.
But you cannot buy it. It's far better than Bill Miller. Far better.
Noted.
So you're at I mean, what is the name of the church? Is it Freedom, a church for all, a church for everybody?
A church for all people, yeah.
A church
Or Freedom Church, however you want.
Freedom Church. Because I always see people always like put the full name on it.
I take it or leave it.
But is that the name?
I think it's called Freedom, a church for all people.
A church for all people. Okay. And so, what are you doing there now? What is your role there?
I just go. No,
I don't even go anymore.
I don't even go anytime. I'm involved with a few different ministries, but probably the biggest thing is we're involved with the youth. Rebecca and I both, and we help run some of the youth activities, the lessons, and all that kind of stuff. We actually put on, as a collective group, we put on a boot camp every year. If you Google South Texas Teen Boot Camp or YouTube search it, you'll see kind of what it is, and it's intense. It's a real.
We get done. Give me that. I'll put that on.
Sure.
The
Yeah,
show
definitely.
Notes. Yeah, so people can look that up.
They just canceled it, so it's not going to happen this year, which is a real bummer. We've been doing it, 8 or 9 years now.
Oh, okay.
And it's former military or current military drill instructors from the church or formerly from the church, and it's a boot camp for these teens. They don't have any time there's no downtime, no free time.
They take away their devices?
Yeah, oh yeah.
No devices?
Yeah, nothing. It's not, you're real locked down. And then we preach at them twice a day. And I was kind of a skeptic about it because it's emotional. Like these kids, it's just a shock, right? It's a culture shock but I've seen them come back and you see like the change in their life. It really is. At first I was kind of like, okay, you had an emotional week, but I've seen them come back the next year and like you can see they've changed, and it's really, really cool to see. And so what made you were skeptical? You thought maybe it was emotional and not going to last? Is that what you're thinking? Yeah, because anytime you do something like you go to a conference or anything like that, you kind of get, hyped up and motivated, but it's easy for that to fade. Yeah. And you're talking about, we're talking about salvation here. And so a lot of times you can make a decision for the Lord and not know, it's just kind of the emotions talking. And so I was curious to see if it was real, but for a lot of the teens in the church and then just some of the neighborhood teens and teens from other churches that we've seen that have come back, you can see like it makes a big difference in their life. I saw that when Dale my granddad used to do those youth trips into Mexico, and that was they would always make that very emotional. They had activities activities they would do where seemed to me to be kind of designed to be emotional and get elicit emotional response. And I'm skeptical of that. Sure. I don't like that. I don't like it when it's done to me. So I'm kind of like, I resist that naturally.
You don't like being pure jerk.
No, not at all. I don't like it in movies. I don't like it ever. And so I don't like it in sermons. Yeah, do I have tear ducts? I cried at Cane's the other day. No, but what I was going to say about that is that there's like a whole list of people that have gone into the ministry and credit those trips as being the thing that started them on that path. And you're talking about a lot of people, and they're this is 20 years going on now. I mean, this is like 20 years ago, and they're pastors, missionaries, youth leaders, all kinds of people in ministry now who were they went to there when they were juniors in high school or even freshmen, and that trip, they say, turned them around. So, God put emotions in us. It's a pathos. Right, exactly. It's not, I do think we ought to be careful that it's not only emotional. Correct. And we give people the information they need to solidify those emotions into convictions, into actual thinking patterns and stuff. And that's more of where, I gear my ministries towards. I'm not natural. To me, to try to be emotional, do an emotional appeal would be like a silk stocking on a pig, right? It wouldn't work. It does. It's not me. But I've learned to not be judgmental about anyone who is good at that. Mm-hmm. I just would hope that they would understand that that's not sufficient. And I agree with you. And it's funny because the thing that really changed my life and really got me serving the Lord, like making a decision. I got saved young, but when I really made the decision to serve the Lord was that mission trip we took to Querétaro with you. Oh, really? It was that time. It was that summer where the Lord said, "This isn't your parents' faith anymore. Like you've got to make a decision." And I remember this distinctly because we came back from the trip and you preached the revival like that next week or the week after. That's right. And I remember just being really excited about
going to church. I had never been excited about going to church before. And like actually listening to the messages, and I was like, the Lord was actually speaking to me versus me just going to go, right?
Right.
That was a big difference. And it was that. It was very...
How old were you?
I was 14.
14.
So
wow.
it was after 8th grade. But that was the Lord. And it was emotional. Just nothing else. It was emotion. It was an emotional appeal. But that's what got me into like really serving the Lord and making my faith my own. So I can't knock anything.
No,
yeah,
of course
it can't. It's just, it works for different people. Certain things work for different people.
Well, I think emotions pretty much work for everyone, even those like me that don't want to admit it. I mean, they obviously do. I mean, movies and everything are made with an emotional appeal, and they're not doing that haphazardly.
Oh yeah,
right?
it's
Or
very
because
intentional. Yes.
Right. They know how it works, and even people that think it doesn't work, it does. It just and so to using it for good is, I think, the right thing to do, and
That's right.
I think it needs to be coupled with strong information and follow up teaching and and then that thing then turns into a thought process, a thought pattern that will outlast when the emotion burns out. Because that is the thing. I mean, people.
Yeah, the emotion wears off.
Emotion is going to wear
Sure.
off. You're going to be on this emotional high. Your body, even physically, you can't withstand that for a long period of time.
Right.
I mean, that emotional, what it does to your actual physiology is enormous. And so if you try to maintain that emotion, that high,
Yeah, the adrenaline or whatever.
no,
it would be,
you'd die of a heart attack. You
Yeah.
can't handle it. It's like living under stress constantly.
Yep.
And so it has to go away. And so I think that's kind of, I wouldn't call it the interpretation, but I think it's a way of applying what Jesus said when he said that the evil spirit leaves the man and he's out of the man. And then when he comes back, if he finds the man empty, then he's going to bring back 7 worse than him. And the way I often apply that to people is that you have times in your life where you have a freedom. You know you are. You're all of a sudden you're free. It might be of vices, it might be of habits, it might be of friends. For whatever reason, God gives you this space of freedom, complete freedom, and you feel it. You know, it's like all of a sudden, and many people have experienced this, where it's like, I'm free, and you think, well, this is wonderful. It's gonna come back.
Yes.
I think almost everybody experiences this right when they get saved. When they first get saved,
Definitely.
they experience that just crazy freedom, like boom. That's going to go away. Yeah. And you're going to be covered up with waves. You're going to be in the tempest again. That's going to happen.
It's going to be bad.
But you have a time in which you can fortify yourself. It's like God is saying, I'm giving you time to build your walls and put up your ramparts and put up your defenses and get ready. And it's kind of what he told Peter. Yep. You got time right now. Pray because your temptation's coming.
It's coming. Yeah,
it's coming. And I think that's kind of what that emotion is. It's if you would look at it, I'm going to have someone in here to talk about this in a few weeks on evolutionary biology and these issues. But if you're an evolutionary biologist, you'd look at this and say somehow this evolved for reproductive purposes, how emotions work. I don't think so, obviously. I think God designed emotions this way, and it gives us this amazing moment in time in our life where we can get things set and then have that that space to what would I say, to order our thoughts and fortify our minds so that we can then take the pressure
whatever's
that's going to come
next.
back.
Yeah, because you can't live off that emotion.
No,
and it's physically impossible.
That's
if you
right.
tried to pursue it, you would it would be the new normal, and then it wouldn't be emotional.
This is my problem with Pentecostalism. They want to live off that emotion all the time. So that's their solution to everything. Their solution to any problem is recapture the emotion. Because when I had the emotion, I didn't have the problem. So I don't have the problem with temptation, the problem with sin, the problem with doubt, the problem with whatever. So, you start, it's the whole thing of calling on Jesus. You're going to repeat the name of the Lord Jesus, Lord Jesus. You repeat it over and over and over and over and over until it builds that emotion. That's what it does. I mean, these are mind-controlled techniques used well beyond the range of Christianity. And so you repeat all these things so much, or you sing the same song, or you sing this song that has a beat that really, gets your adrenaline flowing, boom, 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 and you're singing the same lyrics, and everyone's screaming, and then it's like, yes, okay, and then you feel that release. It's almost like a drug. It's like, and that's how they manage their temptation, the Pentecostals, but they're not managing it through any type of victory.
It's hard because it's like you have to get back to that place, and it's easy to want to get back there because you think about I think about that time when I was in Mexico, and I'm like, I wish I could go back and be there, but you can't. Like,
no,
it's not possible. You've got to move on, and you have to be able to. I do believe you have to be able to logically be able to reason and deduct the things that you need to continue your spiritual walk. Otherwise, you'll just fall, or you'll lose the emotion and think like God's left me or something
Correct.
along those lines.
Yeah, which is why, that's like I was saying, that's where, far as I'm concerned, my ministry, and I don't think this is for everyone. I don't judge anybody's ministry anymore. I mean, I may disagree with some points in it, and I'll be fine to voice it, but I'm fine with them doing it even when I disagree with. It's like if you told me, hey, this is what I do in my ministry, I might think, I don't agree with some of that. And you say, well, should I not do that? No, you should do that because I don't know. I mean, what do I know, right? It's who died and appointed me all-knowing dictator. I wish they would.
Well, yeah.
That actually sounds pretty good now that I'm thinking about it.
And I would say you have a very special gift that isn't for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody has a special gift.
I agree. Yeah. But your gift is very logic and reason based.
That's right.
It really is. It's not an appeal to the emotion. And
No.
for you to try to do that is not relevant. And something you taught me in preaching class that we had several years ago was you need to cater to your strengths.
Yes.
And your strengths aren't necessarily my strengths. And that really helped me because I do have an emotional side and an appeal that sometimes works. I don't use it all the time, but it really helped me to, if it warranted that type of emotional appeal, for me not to be afraid to use that.
Or embarrassed or shamed.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that really helped me it really gave me confidence in the times where I was able to use those emotional appeals where it made sense to not shy away from it. That's
real
really helped
good.
me.
Yeah. So that's where my emphasis is on. I want people to understand the nuts and bolts, the ins and outs of faith, of doctrine. Because for me, it's like I think myself out of things, right?
Sure.
Like I started hearing COVID symptoms and I start feeling them. All of a sudden I have a headache. My throat hurts. I'm like, I think I need to cough. And then I'm like, well, that's stupid because I didn't feel that like 2 seconds ago before I heard the symptoms. And then I can just think my way out of that. And other people, I have people that work for me and they can't do that. They're like, oh, I'm sick. And yeah. So, I think if you understand the inner workings of these things, why they are the way they are, which is a huge problem in Christianity, in my opinion, is that we get statements and not explanations, right? We get the how. I mean, we get the why and the when. We don't get the how.
Yeah. Right.
So about everything, from creation all the way to temptation, we get there's just Christianity makes these dogmatic dictums of how things are, why they are, right? But they don't explain them. It's like, well, why? Why is it that way? And they really don't like science because science is all about why and not about how or when. It's really about why. And Christianity seems to not like that.
And one of the things that we talked about, and we did it in our preaching classes, which I need to talk to you about, by the way. But we did expository, and we kind of took a verse, and we would try to build points off a verse.
See, I wish I was teaching that again now because I've completely revamped how I teach this.
And maybe this is where you're going with it, but I'm thinking, if I take a verse and try to make points out of it, I very easily can take that verse out of context. And how many verses that we Christians use to take out of context? I can name a few. Yeah, tons. Like the study to show yourself approved is a perfect one.
Yeah.
But there's many others.
And an ironic one.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I hadn't thought about it like that. And so I've realized you really need to preach context, and you need to be able to understand what's going on and give that background as part of your introduction to be like when you're preaching. To be able to expound, because you can't, if you bring those points out and they don't match back into the context of the letter or the script, whatever it is, then you've messed up, and your points may still be accurate. We've talked about this before.
Yes.
Your points may still be right, but they're definitely not what the text is saying.
That's right.
And that's very important.
See, that's what some people I think get upset with me about when I talk about this, and and disagree because they don't understand what I'm saying. They're like, no, I heard the sermon that you're saying was out of context, and he said nothing wrong. And my point has always been that, like, I'll be generous and say 99% of neo-evangelical preaching is accurate. They're not saying anything wrong.
Correct.
In fact, they're saying most of what they're saying is good and needful. It ought to be said. I'm not against them saying it. It's not like I'm saying don't preach those things.
Right.
Preach it. But it's not what the text is saying.
Yes.
It's what they want to say, and they have a
Correct.
text to give them a pretext to say it.
Yes.
And you're talking about, taking a verse out of context. And I'm at the point right now in my ministry where if you're preaching from a verse, you're taking it out of context. Because verses, by definition, are out of context.
I heard the podcast with my
Yeah.
brother where
Yes.
y'all talked about you have the whole Bible together. You don't even have the verses.
I don't do that anymore. In fact, when we put it up on the screen, when we were meeting together, we'd have a screen, and I'd put the verses up so people can see them up there, which I love a lot. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be really deaf against it. I used to hate screens. To me, it was too much like the Mac commercial, the Big Brother, and everyone's sitting in church.
Yeah, looking at the
looking at the
preacher,
screen,
yeah.
and I got over that.
Good.
Now I love them, and now I do like a whole I don't know if you've ever seen my.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, I do a whole presentation on like slides, images.
Oh yeah, I've seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I've
try
seen
to
it.
be
Yeah.
real creative, like real artsy with them. I'm not. It's not.
It keeps people engaged, which is the
Yes.
important thing.
My idea is to put up an image that I'm
Yeah.
visualizing in my mind when I'm working on the
Yes.
sermon, and I'm thinking of like an image in my mind, or at least the flavor of an image might be the way of saying it, because I'm not an artist. And so then I can go on, and now with Google Images, you can just find so many pictures,
Yes.
and you get a picture that just I'll spend probably 6 hours making each presentation after I've made the sermon, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Because that's the part that people remember. They'll remember the picture.
They will, and
And
it
then
helps.
that'll-
Because
it
it'll
does, sure.
it cuts down on what I have to explain. You like look at this image,
Yeah.
and then if it's done right, then it like connects, and that's where I can get a little bit of emotional into what
sure.
I'm doing, because there's an emotional appeal when you see something that
Yeah.
immediately that goes directly into your emotional core when you look at something,
Yep.
at your visual cortex, and so. I'll put in those images or whatever and put those up there and things. I love the screens. Anyways, when I was telling you is when I put up the verses now, I don't even put verse numbers. I just put John.
What it says, yeah.
Yeah, I just put sometimes not even the chapter. I just put 1 John, and then I just put up the sentence.
Sure.
Right, the full sentence. We read through at least the full sentence. I never anymore will read a
Half
portion.
sentences
No.
or whatever.
No.
Yeah. Or a one verse, which is a
like-
semicolon and a comma.
Yeah, and not even that sometimes. It's just it's a random, because there's no punctuation in the Greek text upon which the verse numberings were made in 1551. Sure. There's no punctuation. All punctuation is inferred through grammar, and it's not absolute. I mean, there can be debate as to where punctuation might be in these things. And so in the end, these verse numberings are random divisions. They just randomly have split stuff up.
Yeah, it was just to help. It was for reference.
Right. It was because he wanted to put
Sure.
the Greek and the Latin, which was what Erasmus did. Erasmus made Greek and Latin. People don't understand this. So Erasmus's goal was Latin, not Greek.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I know. There is so much misinformation when it comes to Bible translations and Bible manuscripts and the text and everything. Erasmus had no goal of promulgating a Greek New Testament. It was a Latin He wanted to replace the Latin Vulgate, which he considered to be corrupt, and corrupt not in the sensationalistic, triggering way of thinking about it, meaning not accurate to the original is what corrupt means in the manuscript textual criticism thing. When you say something's corrupt, you don't mean corrupt like in a political sense, right? Or evil. You just mean it's not matching the original. It's not
the original manuscript.
The original text. Well, the original text.
Okay.
Right. So that's because textual critics are dealing with the text as in a theoretical sense, not with particular manuscripts, because the manuscripts could be corrupt as well.
Sure, that's fair.
But so Erasmus wanted a update. He wanted a new Latin Bible to replace the Vulgate. So he put a lot of work into the Latin, and he wanted people to understand why he made the changes from the Vulgate, which had been the people's Bible for over 1,000 years at that point. Imagine that, 1,000 years reign.
Yeah, and trying to change the
And now he's
culture,
coming out,
philosophy
actually
around
1,200
it,
years. So he's coming out and he's saying, I'm going to change this. He wanted people to know why he changed it. So he put in a column next to it the Greek text so people could see. But very terrible Greek text. He himself considered it to be a terrible effort because he wasn't.
He wasn't worried about
it was
the
just
Greek,
like
he was
a
worried
reference.
about the Latin.
Yeah, he's just saying, look, this is the Greek. In fact, the way he got the Greek into there is he sent the actual manuscripts that he was collating. He sent them to the printer with handwritten notes all over them. He took actual manuscripts and like marked them up and corrected them, and then sent them to the printer. And the printer had to then put
Figure
in all
out
those
what-
with all those corrections and print that text with the Greek and the Latin.
Latin,
What he
yeah.
didn't realize was that the reformers were going to say, no, we don't want that Latin. We want the Greek. We want the Greek, and we don't have access to manuscripts. So here, somebody who's knowledgeable and has put together some manuscripts, we're just going to go with this. This is better than the Latin, which is debatable whether his Greek at that time was better
because
than
it wasn't
the
his
Latin.
focus.
No,
Yeah.
no. You go back. There's good documentation. Erasmus. This is one thing about Erasmus. He wrote extensive notations on his work. So you can go back, and very few people do this, but I've actually gone back and read many of his notations, and his notations on his Greek are very disparaging. He didn't have a high opinion of his own Greek. It just wasn't the issue, right?
It wasn't his focus.
He was not
right,
pushing that as saying, hey, he was pushing his Latin. All his work in his life, that as far as I can tell, he never changed. His work was all on the Latin. So Stephanus, he was also doing Greek and Latin. And he wanted people to be able, who didn't know one or the other very well, or maybe neither, he wanted them to be able to look at the Greek, look at the Latin, and know which corresponds to which is very hard to do if you don't know
In
a
any
language.
yeah.
Right. If you don't know the language well, to just take a paragraph of each and know where you're at in it.
Yeah,
I've
it's very
tried this.
difficult. Even with Spanish, which is
Yes.
which is much easier than other languages.
It's very hard. Like I went through and I went through and took quite a while and read through all the significant textual variants between the Textus Receptus or the received text and the critical text, all of them. And I looked at them in each corresponding text and in whatever manuscripts I could find and read them in all of those and compared all of them to see what they actually were, what the issue was with them, right? Anyway, another off topic, but that was hard to do because the manuscripts don't have verse numberings. And so I'm in there and I don't read Greek at all very well. Yeah. So I'm in there trying to find it, and it took me forever to find, okay, here it is. And
here's where they match.
Here's where they are, and then you compare them, and then so you can see with your own eyes. I want to see with my own eyes where they're getting these things from. Yeah, very hard. So Stephanus goes, hey, let's make this easy. Let's just reference every 20 words, basically. Let's just chop it all up into pieces, put a number next to them, and you'll know. Sure. Now you know. Now you can go down and find it. It was never meant to become a preaching tool, which is what it's become.
Yes.
And more than that, I mean, now it's taken on like super spiritual meaning. Like this is the 7th verse of the 7th chapter of the 7th book, 777. This must be meaningful. It's like, no, it's not meaningful at all.
The question I have is, who in the world chopped up Esther 8:9? Because that's like so long.
I know. Now, some of the Old Testament stuff, there's other reasons for that.
Sure.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. Some of them are crazy, crazy long. It's like, why'd you divide it there? I agree. And then some of the ones like in Ephesians, I think it's Ephesians going from 2 to 3 or 1 to 2. I'd go back and look. But it doesn't even end in a period. It's like the sentence runs into the next chapter.
Next chapter.
Yeah. It's one of the few cases, but yeah, it does do that.
Yeah. And some of them don't even have, I remember there's a couple, and I think it's in Psalms, where they don't even have it goes in the next verse, but there's no punctuation. Like it wasn't even a stopping point. It just, you have to literally read into the next verse without stopping. And I'm thinking, they messed up some, grammatical thing there in the Bible. No, that wasn't the case at all. It was actually meant to be that way. And that's where you kind of see like, it's a dividing. Yeah. It's a matter of division and reference.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's like, in a more modern book, they would put little numbers in the margins next to the lines. They wouldn't actually split the line and capitalize the first letter of every one. Right. That's what they've done with verses. I mean, I know people may think, because I go on this all the time. Sure. Because I think I'm the only one that I've heard. I'm sure there's other people out there, but I'm the only one I've heard that's saying anything about this. And people are reading the Bible thinking that every verse is actually a sentence. And I think it's terribly detrimental to understanding the Bible. I think it's terrible.
It's easy to take literally verses out of context.
Yes.
Because there were no verses.
You're
to
like,
begin
I
with.
have a verse for that. Like, maybe. I mean, what does that mean? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, crazy. So, are you preaching at the church?
I preach some. Most of it's with the youth.
Okay.
And the lessons and all that stuff. I've preached some, but not. I wouldn't say I regularly preach.
Because I did hear one of your sermons you preached at a men's meeting, I think it was recently. Did you guys have a men meeting short time ago?
We had.
Saw
Are you
it
talking about
filmed.
what I saw on Facebook? Yeah.
I saw it. Yeah, I think it was maybe there I saw it.
Yeah, we do like you call it a mini revival. We do a time where we pray and then we'll have someone speak. And so I did one of those. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
the
I saw that.
the best one was when like the pastor was sick and the other pastor had something bad happen in his life, and I got called at 4 a.m. Hey, can you preach the Sunday morning message? That was
How'd it go?
I thought it went okay. I listened to it afterwards and thought, man, I was very nervous about it, but that was kind of have to be expected given the short notice. Of
Right.
that.
Yeah.
There's something I want to say, and I'll appeal to your emotion here, but it's something I have never actually told you, but I wanted to tell you, and I knew you wouldn't let me tell you on live, but that was about 2 years before I got married. The Lord really kind of laid it on me, like, you're not going to have time when you get married to do stuff. You're going to want to spend time with your family, your wife, and all those things. And so if you want to get good at something, like, this is the time to do it. You need to make use of this time, like redeem the time, literally. And that's when you started those preaching classes.
Oh yeah.
And I realized, like, my preaching was okay. I was probably about hit and miss 50-50. But when I was a miss, it was a bad miss. Like, I would sit down and it was like dead silent because it was bad.
That's
like,
always
just
bad.
straight up, it was bad. And I remember some of the things you've said in those preaching classes. I don't know, it was maybe 12 weeks. And then I know we went into Galatians is now my favorite book, by the way, because of that class.
Oh, good.
There's probably 15 or 20 things you said along with the structure. Like, you need a structure, you need to focus on conclusion, you need to have a point, like you need to have something to say.
That's the big one.
It really is. And it really turned me into a good preacher. Like,
excellent.
My message is I know before I preach this is going to be good, and it's I would say my success rate is much higher, 90 to 95%.
Nice.
What you don't know, and this is what's really awesome, is it's transformed how I work. So my job now is very different than what it used to be in information technology. I actually run a meeting every Thursday morning at 10 o'clock. The entire IT organization is invited. We've been averaging about 300 people now.
Wow.
I run this meeting, and we're trying to promote this type of new culture. I'm basically preaching a sermon.
Oh, cool.
Every hour. And it's kind of a dialogue, kind of like this, kind of like a podcast. But it's public speaking. Yeah. And I took the meeting. Meeting was horrible before what it was. It was a finger pointing, like throw people under the bus type meeting. Really bad. We talk about recent
not
outages.
Healthy at all.
Yeah, real bad. And we're trying to promote a culture which is real biblical, which is like, don't quit pointing the finger at someone when you've got a beam in your own eye. Like, it really is, the culture that we're trying to promote is very biblical, which is funny. So I'm promoting this culture. I'm basically preaching for an hour every Thursday, and we've been able to average about 300 people.
Are people 50. Enjoying the meetings now?
Oh yeah, I get compliments, and it's given me incredible amount of visibility with like vice presidents. Like, my name is out there in the entire IT community. And
that is awesome.
It really is, and honestly, it's a result of that preaching class. There were many other people who influenced me and helped me, but that preaching class was probably the biggest influence in that.
I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate it. It's really helped me, obviously in preaching, but in just my work now.
That's amazing.
It's really
the Japanese have a saying. They say, "Don't fix the blame, fix the problem." I always like it's what I use in my company. I tell people because something will go wrong, and I want to know who did it. And everyone gets scared because they think I want to know who did it because I want to blame them. Like, I don't care. I want to know who did it. I want to know why they did it so I can teach them how not to do it.
Precisely.
That's why I'm not looking to like fire anybody. If I fired people that made mistakes, I have to fire everybody, including myself.
Right.
But I do need to know who made the mistake because I need that person to figure out why did you do it, what were you thinking, or whatever.
Correct.
I'm not looking to fix the blame. I'm looking to fix the problem. Yeah. That's right.
It's called we call it a postmortem. We actually do the meeting where we talk about what happened. In fact, we had with the stimulus check thing on April 14th, huge outage across all the banks. Like if you look at, I think it's downdetector.com, and you look at when those banks, all the major banks had massive issues. We, relatively speaking, did not have that bad of an issue. But there was about 10 teams. This is one of the topics we talked about was this massive major incident that we had. And we had like 10 speakers. So I was able to organize 10 speakers and get them to talk about like productive things, not throw under the bus, but how can we learn from this and get better? And that's where everyone was like, oh, you did a real good job trying to, basically wrangle everyone and bring out the best. And I like bring out the best in people because of this, but it really is because of that structure that I've had. But just that culture, that mindset of, what can we learn from this and get better is what we're promoting, which is really cool. Excellent. I love doing it.
Yeah, no, that would be good.
It's awesome. It's biblical. I feel like it's very biblical.
And it's great experience. Any type of speaking you do is going to give you the hours of experience that you need to be a good speaker. Yes. There's no getting around that. Yeah. If anyone's out there wants to be a preacher, right, you have to start speaking. You have to take it seriously every time you get a chance. You have to take it seriously, no matter how small. So if it's a Sunday school class to 9-year-olds or whatever, you got to take it seriously.
Correct.
Prepare like if it was you're going to speak at Carnegie Hall. You have to prepare with the same seriousness, or at least as close as you can. I mean, maybe that's not realistically possible to have that level of seriousness in your own mind when you know it's a small thing. But as much as possible, you have to realize that you are preparing for possibly the largest stage on earth eventually. And so you have to be taking it seriously every time. And that's why phoning in sermons on Sunday mornings, like so many neo-evangelicals do, they're robbing themselves of they're robbing their future, right? Yes. And you have to take it seriously. You have to work hard on it. And I think that sermons that are prepared with less than 10 hours of preparation time are going to not be very good, personally. I just don't think you're going to get around the sheer hours of time you need to really process the material, especially if you're not just conjuring up things out of thin air, right? If you're actually trying to give an expository type sermon, you're going to have to familiarize yourself very well with that material and where you can speak on it with knowledge because it's in you. It's not just on you.
Yes. Yeah, that's the hard thing. It's easy to see it on paper, but it has to be inside of you. And that's where, people say there's like a deviation, but that's when you can deviate with confidence. So like there you are preaching your message and you're about to go off on some rabbit trail, but you know exactly how that rabbit is going to tie back into the message because it's like inside of you. And it makes a world of difference.
It does.
It really does.
It does. Yeah. A while back, you were posting some posts, which I enjoyed a lot on economics, but then you quit. What was that about?
Are you talking about the coronavirus stuff?
Yeah, you were like, well, it's kind of about that, but you were like putting up questions like, how many, I forgot the questions now, but it's like how many people have to die to whatever, but it was from an economic standpoint. But then you got like all timid on me and quit.
I got real emotional, literally, and I realized when I was emotional, I think, and this is a personal opinion, but I think when you're emotional about any topic, political or otherwise, it's typically because you are not confident in your position. And when I started realizing I was emotional, I still think I was right, but I didn't want to post anything, especially on social media where there's going to be backlash. Yeah. And I feel like my responses to that would not have basically been a bad testimony.
Do you reply to stuff on your post?
Not really.
I never do anymore.
Yeah, good. You're getting wise.
Yeah, no, I am. I like if I post something, I don't post much anymore.
Yeah.
Just because, I was reading Facebook the other day and I found a mistake on there.
Just one?
Yeah. It shocked me. Like I have to fix this.
Yeah. On your Facebook or someone?
Just on the internet. No, I just say it's just a joke. But yeah, no, I pretty much quit posting altogether.
That's a very wise thing. It took me years to get there, but yeah.
I would love for it to work. I mean, to me, the whole idea of social media and be able to and communicating ideas, but nobody wants to hear anything valuable.
People don't want to have a discussion. People just want to blab their point.
and to
it's all
and to
hard.
people who all agree with them.
Yeah,
They don't
correct,
want to
yeah.
tell. I don't see. I want people to friend me who don't like me.
Yes.
I want people to
have differing opinions.
anti-friend me.
Yeah.
Could we have an anti-friend?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I want to anti-friend you. I don't like you.
Yeah.
I don't like your opinion. So I want you to be my anti-friend because I want to read what you're saying.
Yes.
And I want to interact with that.
Yep.
Right. And then I want you to interact with what I'm saying.
Yes.
People don't want that. They want to go out there and act like they're arguing a point, but to the choir. That's what is crazy about Facebook. And so I assumed when I first started, see, Terry does not want me on Facebook.
Okay.
All right.
That's
why we are in here and we're talking about it and she's not hearing
That's
us.
why this is on YouTube and not Facebook Live. No, I'm just
Yeah. No, she does not want me on Facebook. She's always telling me, get off of Facebook. You're ruining my friendships. But I'm like, I don't understand this. People will post like this argument for something. I'm assuming that I was assuming they wanted someone to push back on that and say, no, I don't think that's accurate because of this, or this, or the other. I come to find out that's not
the case.
No,
That's not what Facebook is for.
At all.
It's not.
Not at all. People want you to say, I like it.
Yeah, it wants you to hit the like button and not say anything else.
Yeah.
Or amen or whatever.
Or great thoughts, or thank you, bro, or whatever. And I'm thinking, that's just useless.
Yeah.
I mean, that's useless. If you're going to do that, then post recipes. Although I would probably criticize that because most of my friends are horrible cooks. And I probably want to tell them that.
Don't listen to this recipe. I've tasted it.
That's you don't know what you're talking about. That's garbage. No, it's a crazy thing. Crazy thing how that's stupid. It's real strange how Facebook is. And so and I don't understand Twitter. I need someone to explain that to me. Maybe you understand it. You can explain it to me later. But I don't understand it. I don't understand how it works. I just don't get it exactly. And so, so I'm basically now off social media. But anyways, you were posting those on economics, and I really was enjoying that.
Yeah, my main point was going to be, has nothing to do with anything spiritual, but it was really about the fact that what we were doing with the quarantine was going to kill people, but it was going to kill people through economics, but it's unmeasurable. But the fact that people are we're literally losing money because people aren't productive and working, and that is going to end up with like loss of life. So the question was like, was the quarantine worth it? And because I only hear one side of the story, which is how many people are dying from the virus.
Yes.
But no one is talking about the economic impact and potentially the deaths that come from the lack of basically people not having the money that they used to have. And that was my point, was just to think about the other side of it. So that's all I was going with.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a very important consideration because
it is.
Too many times decisions are made as if it's a black and white dichotomy. It's like either we lock everything down or everybody dies, right? In that case. And any other instance you want to put in, we could just use this as an example. And it's not taken into account that there are externalities to every decision, and there are ramifications to every decision. And it's not just the people that will die from the economic downturn, it's the people that already have died.
Yes.
Already. So there's already like, I want to say 5 or 6 times more people have died from the economic ramifications of this than have died from the disease.
I haven't seen statistics.
No, yeah, because they haven't been getting. Let's just take one of the ones that they can really focus on because it's measured so well is cancer issues. So cancer is really tracked because there's so many organizations that are tied to it and stuff. So cancer's tracked real closely, and you're going to have millions of deaths, and they estimate maybe 500,000 so far. Unneeded deaths from cancer-related issues because people don't have the economic wherewithal to treat themselves or to get pre-screening and all of this stuff. All that stuff has gone by the wayside, right?
Yes.
Everything
or I'm scared to get pre-screened.
Right. They won't go to the hospital or the hospital's not taking people. I mean, whatever it is, there's just, and you think, well, that's not a lot of people. No, it's not a lot of people. Out of 7 billion, it's 500,000.
Yeah, but compared to the number,
but that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
And the ramifications are going to ramp up. I mean, but we've already started to see it. And they're talking about 500 million people have already went back into poverty when they had been lifted out of poverty, and now they're back into it. And so what is that? And when America, we hear poverty and we're thinking, oh, that means they need to have their rent stayed for a while. No. We're talking about UN level poverty, right? Where you're living on less than $1 a day, where you're actually literally starving to death, where your children are starving to death, where you're dying from diseases from malnutrition. A disease that normally would bounce off of a healthy person decimates someone who's malnourished. Their immune system is destroyed just through malnourishment.
Yeah.
And so, you're talking about levels of death that are well, they're unfathomable.
Well, and I think in one of the posts I made about that was just what's the price of life? Because
that was a good one.
People are saying,
Do you remember how you worded that?
I think that's how I started it. So the way I phrased it was,
it was like if it would cost so much.
Yeah, exactly. It was $100,000. So I said, would you pay $100,000 to prolong your life 20 years? Well, what if you did that? And I kind of whittled it down to, would you pay the same $100,000 for 6 hours of life? So everyone would say, typically everyone, unless they were being cynics or whatever, but everyone would say, yeah, I'd pay for 20 years. I paid $100,000 for 20 years. And everyone would also say, I would not pay $100,000 for 6 hours of my life. So then that means there's a price. And that was the whole point of the argument, which is there's a price, there's a cost associated to life. It's not, and you're saving lives, but for how long? I mean, everyone's going to die at some point. And it was just bringing that kind of economic reality. By the way, I got that from Basic Economics because I read the whole book after you told me it was a good book.
It is a great book. It is a fantastic book.
But yeah, that was the mentality. And honestly, I don't know where you stand on this, but I think having Christians really understanding finances and economics, their own finances, personal finances, and then just economics in general, really helps and enhances your own spirituality, your own spiritual experience. It brings to light some of these verses that talk about, and not even directly talk about economics, but help you. Like we might talk about missions and things like that, but I have a very economic approach to how you handle missions and where you should give your money. And it's because of how I understood economics and just being taught the basics behind it. It really has changed what I think about from a lot of spiritual things as well.
I agree completely. In fact, I don't know, you tell me what you think, but I think Christians are, my statement, I've made this many times, and I assume people don't like to hear it, because I just found people don't like to hear anything I say. But I don't understand why.
But you maybe a little abrasive.
Mike Pemberton says, I fire for effect. So, I like try to shock people. Yes. But because I find that people don't listen when you don't do that. I find people aren't listening. And it's like, and especially if you're the only one saying something. So many times I feel like I'm the only one saying something. And that's probably not true. I'm probably being too much like Elijah and like, I'm the only one. And God's like, no, there's thousands of other people, you loser.
They're just not speaking up, yeah.
Or they're speaking somewhere else. Sure. I mean, my circle is so small, really. I mean, it's pathetically small. I mean, it's tiny.
Yeah.
And I wish it were smaller. I was so happy about this whole virus thing. I really was. I was so happy. I was going to get quarantined. I was going to live in my office. It was going to be wonderful. And I haven't had a single day off, not one day off. It's like, this is a complete...
you invite strangers over.
I know. I shouldn't do that. No, but what I've been saying is that I think Christians are horribly bad at economics. And most Christians, I think, are pretty bad at finances, actually, also. I know I was. I was terrible.
Sure.
Just terrible. I don't think you ever were. I think you were always pretty good at that. But I was terrible.
I have my parents to thank for that.
Yes.
There's a couple of things. One was I understood compound interest when I was 5 years old. I got
eighth wonder of the world.
Well, I don't know. I got $50.
No, that's what it's called.
Oh, yeah.
Einstein, eighth wonder of the world is what he called.
The compound interest. Yes, I thought you were talking about my understanding as
no. Nice try.
But it was funny. A funny story about that. When I heard 3% interest, which was the rate at the time, I'm 5 years old, and I thought it was 3% per month. So I was calculating $50. Man, I'm gonna double my money in like 8 months. I forget what it was. And then when I found out it was 3% per year, I was like, well, this is a waste. And I know it's not a waste, but I remember distinctly thinking about compound interest that way. I had a whole loan program, and when I was 9 years old, about how I was going to loan, my classmates money, and I didn't realize they weren't going to pay me back. But
you didn't realize that interest was to compensate for risk.
I did not. No, of course I wasn't that advanced. I was 9. But so part of it is just my parents. My parents, you've seen this, but they drove 10-year-old Buicks. Yeah. And ask my mom about the $1,000 Subaru she got that, you would floor the thing and you couldn't go fast enough to drive on the highway. You had to really ramp up. They drove used cars, old stuff. They bought the same house, lived in the same house for 20 years. And they did that so that they were basically debt-free. And they used their money to give, and they were very generous givers.
Yes, they were.
And still are generous givers. And I learned that when I took the Dave Ramsey course, I didn't learn a lot. Yeah. And it wasn't because Dave Ramsey's content isn't good. It was because I learned all that by example from my parents.
Yes.
And there's no substitute for that leading by example. But that's kind of my mentality of economics. I understood it kind of because I was interested, but a lot of it, especially the finance part, was because I had a really good example.
Yeah, you really did. I tried to get your dad to speak at one of the men's meetings on it, and then he, I guess because his health wasn't too good at the time, wasn't able to.
I remember that where we did a bunch of topics.
Yes.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was good. And your dad was scheduled to be on it, and he had to pull out from health reasons. But yeah, I wanted him to talk on that because I considered him to be someone. See, I talk on it, but I do it very reluctantly, honestly. I know people don't think that maybe, but I really am very reluctant to speak on finance because I was never good at it. Sure. And I'm not naturally good at it. It's a constant struggle for me because my tendency is to overspend. My tendency is to overbuy.
See, I didn't know that about you.
No, yeah.
I didn't know that. And my tendency is definitely to save.
Yeah, see, I don't. My tendency is, if I want to do podcasting, then I'm going to buy the equipment and I'm going to set up and I'm going to do it right. I'm not going to do it
skip out and
I'm not going to do it with a laptop and stuff like that. I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy the right stuff and try to do it right. It's just how I do it, which is why my business is one reason why my business does well. Not this isn't my business. Mm-hmm. Nobody watches me and nobody will pay me for it. I only have 2 viewers because you're not watching today. So no, this is definitely not my business, but my business in construction does well because and this is what I encourage people to do in their own lives is to find something they are really good at and then find somewhere where it's very useful but not obvious. Yes. So no one is applying that knowledge. See, if I took my way of doing things into a field where everybody is doing it like that, innovating and applying their resources in the way I do, well, then I would be competing
you wouldn't stick out, yeah.
No, I'd be just one more person in there fighting to stay up. But nobody's doing this in construction. I mean, construction, they're basically still using a stick tied to a rock as a hammer. I mean, that's essentially where they're at in construction. The technology, they're way, way, way behind in this.
Sure.
In every sense. And so I can go in and with minimal effort, right, I can innovate and invent some tools and processes and things and have maximum return on it.
Yeah, and you're giving them a cheaper price and probably getting
actually I can charge a better price because I can do the job faster.
Yeah, so they're winning.
Yes.
And then you're winning
they're
also
getting because theirs is the deadlines.
Yes.
Especially in my field. In my field, it's a small part of the actual building. So it's not raising their price substantially. Sure. But when time I get into a building, they're already behind schedule. So like we were working on a big high-rise in Austin, apartment buildings. And they were paying, how much was it?
For
their liquidated damages? $25,000 a day. Yeah, $25,000 a day liquidated damages. Because
they were so far behind.
Yeah, once you pass, in the contract it is if they don't deliver the building by a certain date, then the company that's ordering it, the owner is losing money because he can't rent them or sell the units.
That makes
sense.
Then
they have to pay those damages. They're $25,000 a day and they paid that and they're still paying that. That was a year and a half ago they started.
Wow.
No, it's crazy. So by the time I get there, they're like throwing money at stuff. Like, we just need this done.
Yes.
And so if I can come in and a normal crew, let's say, can install, they say a normal crew can install what, 40 toilet papers a day, maybe 50?
Probably less.
Yeah,
Depending on
we'll be
the
generous,
job.
say 50.
Okay.
And we go in and install 250 or 300 or 400 in a day. Well, they're willing to pay me 4 or 5 times more than what they'll
Sure.
pay the other people, because they're actually, time you figure it out,
Yeah, they're saving money.
they're
'cause this-
saving money.
They're bleeding out with
Yes.
25,000.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is most people
Yeah.
don't actually know that, or don't do the math on that. So they decide to go cheaper, which ends up costing them so much more money.
because it's taking them longer.
Well,
and
yeah,
they missed the
well,
deadline.
Well, the
what
GC
costs more
will-
money is that they hire the cheaper people, and then they're not performing very well, and they've paid them to do everything wrong, and so then they get rid of them, and then they pay us what we charge plus to go back and fix everything
Yeah,
they've
so they-
already done.
They got the cheap plus you guys.
Yeah, and the you know,
Sure.
hopefully, you know, over time, and this is what we have seen, that a lot of these contractors will start just hiring us up front because they'll get it done on time, they'll get it done right, and I've invented tools where we can do things that no one else can do.
Right.
So that's all very helpful. But
I think in terms of your like finding a niche, it just, and I think this is the Lord kind of worked this out for me, which was public speaking is a niche in the IT world.
yes, it is.
Nobody.
Well,
wants
no,
to
those people
do-
are horrible at it.
Oh yeah.
They go into IT because they don't want
because
to.
they don't. Yeah, they're
yeah.
very introverted and
Yeah.
no one wants to do the talking. And so when I realized this, I said, and this meeting, which was a real finger pointing meeting, I said, I'll take this over, and it's been my vision. Like, I've made this what it is, and delivered successful content every week, week in, week out. But no one's doing public. Like, there are very few people that I know at my work who can do what I'm doing.
No, yeah, there's very few
yeah.
people in the world that can do it.
Yes.
There really is. I mean, it's a very rare gift. That's why successful performers, because it's a performance. That's what it is.
It's what it is.
It's
Yes,
exactly what it
definitely.
is. And successful performers, good ones, are paid very highly.
Yes.
And it is a job. See, and you'll know, we're talking about finances. There's 2 ways in which you can make your money. One is your money makes money, so you invest it.
Sure.
Right? And that's how you get really rich.
Yes.
I mean, real rich. Of course, that's also how you get really poor, right?
I'm gonna tell you. Let me remind you. I have a story on that. By
Yeah.
the way.
That you can get really poor that way, and you can get really rich that way. And you can never work hard enough to get as rich as you can investing,
Sure.
because you only have so many hours. That's me, right?
Yeah, it's your human capital.
I'm really
You're
good at
limited.
what I do, but I only have 24 hours a day.
Yes.
And so even if I didn't have to sleep, I could only do so much. And at that, I'm
Sure.
done. But whereas you invest and you get more people working for you, making you money, well, then you can really make money.
Yes.
That's why you think of these like Hollywood stars who they make $20 million on a film, but they're not really rich.
Yeah.
They're not
unless
rich
they're doing the
unless
investing.
they're
Yeah.
investing, but they're not really rich. Even if they don't spend all their money away like some of them do, right? Even if they're not just blowing their money, they're not. When you come, it's interesting. You go on to the most richest people in the world, and they're not the people that are making $20 million for 6 months of work.
Yes.
They're not.
They're not. Yeah.
They're the people that are investing their money. You don't know them. They're not. They don't have a job that pays
Correct.
a lot of money necessarily, but they're investing their money, and their investments are what are making them very wealthy.
Yes.
Which is why people need to invest.
Yes. And you can't invest if you're in debt.
No, you cannot. You cannot invest if you're in debt. You have to get out of debt. That's exactly right. Yeah. So that scenario worked out very well for me. The way I am and doing that. But yeah, I'm just naturally not good at finances. So I prefer to not talk about it because I always feel a little hypocritical. And I don't ever present myself as being an expert. I always tell people, look, I learned this. People had to teach me this. I learned it through a hard way, terribly hard way. And I'm still learning it. But I do still believe that all Christians need to hear it. And if no one's going to say it,
Yes.
then
It
I'm
needs
going
to
to
be
say
said,
it because it
yes.
has to be said. It has to be said.
That's right.
Too many Christians are terrible. Do you agree with that? Too many Christians are terrible with finances?
I think there's a little hyperbole there.
A
for
little
sure.
bit.
Just
I
a
fire
little
for
bit.
effect.
Yeah. I really do believe that. And if a 20,
What percentage do you think are, let's not be hyperbolic. So what percentage of Christians do you think are bad with finances?
it's a personal opinion, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, of course,
All right.
yeah. I'll hold you to it. No.
Let's see. Let me start counting the people here. Whatever. I would say, oh man, maybe I'm being generous here, but I'd say about 30% of people are good. and understand finances.
I think that's probably fair. It depends how wide we're going also. I think
fair.
when you get to some churches, you're going to find more of them. Right.
That's
I
true.
know churches where there's some people, because I've met them, and like some of the churches that would go to the youth groups in Mexico from Houston, these Houston
Sure, yeah.
churches, and they had guys there that were construction workers, electricians, businessmen, whatever, and they seem to be very good with their money. And so, yeah, there probably is a higher percentage. I find that in our circles, I mean, I'm not as much in your circle where you're at, so I don't know the people at Freedom, so I'm not really speaking to them. But our preview, where our Venn diagrams intersect, you and I find that in that circle, it's a very high percentage that are bad with it.
Why do you think that is, or what's your?
Well, I think one is because they aren't good with economics. And they, like, for instance, many people that might be listening to this might not know the difference between economics and finances.
Sure, yeah, explain that.
Huh? Why don't you want me to explain that?
Go ahead.
Okay. So,
I'll give you my opinion.
okay, I'm going to tell you, and then you tell me how I'm wrong. No, you can't. You have to like it. You have to, I need to get a big like button right here where you can just press it. Press it when you like it. Make this a Facebook show. So finances is easy. Finances is the handling of your money, is how I would put it, to put it real simply. So that's just that's the straightforward one, especially when we're talking about personal finances, and to get it out of government and all of public fund. But just personal finances is how you handle your money, how you spend it, how you save it. Whatever you do with your money, that's your finances. Economics is a whole science, right? It's a whole science on how you administer scarce resources. And it can have absolutely nothing to do with money. In fact, it has nothing to do with money directly. Money is a way to. It's like numbers are to math.
Yes.
Right. We made up. We wrote out. We invented these number symbols in order to quantify and express math.
Yes.
And finance is a way of expressing economics.
Money is, yes.
Money is. I'm sorry. Yes, money or finance. Money is a way of expressing economics. It is the symbology. Symbols. It's the symbols of economics. Yeah. Which is why it's important. So when people say, "Well, it's only money," no, it doesn't work that way. You're missing the point completely. Right. It's not only money. Money is nothing in and of itself.
Yes, it's the value.
It's the expression of other things. Correct. So like in your post, it's like, how much would you pay to live for 20 years? $100,000. Well, $100,000 is nothing. That isn't meaningful in and of itself. What you're saying is, in 20 years of my life, I'm expecting that this number is less than or greater than the value that I can obtain from that time.
Yes.
Right? Because as you deduce that, like you said, you could go step that down 10 years, 7 years, 3 years, 4 days. I mean, at some point you say, no,
it's not worth it.
It's not worth it anymore. I'm not willing to spend $100,000 for 3 seconds of time. Yes. No, I want to do it. Yeah, it's like, why bother? What's the point? So at some point, and so it's not, you can't, because you could always say, well, it's only money. But no, money is mathematical symbology, symbolism for. That's how I would explain it. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think finances is a personal thing, and economics is, I think of it at a macro level, so I'm thinking macro. But just in general, economics is the study of value behind things. And you mentioned that it doesn't have to do with money. I think in the basic economics book, they even talk about you have like beachfront property. They use that thing. And let's just say there was no money. You still have to allocate it, because there's only so much beachfront property and more demand for it. Another one they use is you have, like in a battlefield, a very serious thing where you have 10 people and it's like, which one do you save? You're a medic.
Yeah, triage is economics and medicine. It's another word for economics.
Precisely. And so when you see that and you're thinking, how can I get the most value, which is how many lives can I save? That's a very hard and difficult problem to try to solve, but it's economics at its core.
That's right. That's exactly what it is.
That's why I see the difference between like personal finances, which is how I manage my money and my well-being, and economics, which is kind of the value proposition across the board.
That's
scarce
right.
Resources.
That's right. And it's for all resources. I mean, it's for consumable resources like groceries. It's for property. It's for time. How you manage your time is an economic consideration.
is, yeah.
Friendships, relationships, marriage is an economic consideration. All of these things are economical in their consideration. It's like, who you're going to marry. That's an economic consideration.
It really is.
It's not a financial one necessarily. It could,
Correct.
it may have nothing to do with money whatsoever, even though you
Yes.
find out after you're married, it has everything to do with money. No, it's an economic consideration.
It really is.
And so when Christians don't understand economics, well, then they don't understand finances, because finances is an expression of economics.
Sure.
I mean, that's one reason they don't. Another reason I think they don't understand finances is because they don't understand the connection between money and spirituality.
Yes.
They think there should be no connection. It's like these dummies who think they say we need to get money out of politics. Like, what are you talking
You need
about?
to pay the president $5 million.
That's exactly what I say. He needs
I
to
learned
be
that from
well
you.
paid. Oh, very good.
I just repeated
And I learned it from Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell wrote an article saying the problem with politics is we're not paying enough. Who in their right mind is going to run for president and make, what is he making now, 250?
I think it's 400,000.
It's 400,000 and went up to 400,000? I mean, that's nothing to run the country, 400,000 a year.
No, you need to pay them. They need to be the highest paid person.
Yeah, they
or
need
one
to
of the
be
highest
highly
people.
paid, like a highly paid CEO. They need to make a lot of money. And it's not like we don't have the money to spend on that. I mean, that's
Of course
crazy.
not. Yeah, we just did a $2 trillion stimulus package.
Yeah, and then they need to do the same thing with Congress. Congress ought to be paid much more money
agree.
than what they're being paid. And maybe then you could have term limits or something. A long thing. Yes, but anyways, yeah, you can't get money out of these things because then how are we gauging things? That's like saying
That's right.
It's like saying we're gonna put an end to the problem of people being short by banishing rulers.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna outlaw rulers and tape measures, and then we'll solve shortness.
Because no one will know.
Yeah,
They can't measure
I mean
themselves.
that's silly.
Right.
It doesn't fix the problem. And so when Christians want to eradicate money out of spirituality, as if somehow there's something dirty about money, what they're doing is they're eradicating the ability to quantify spiritual decisions in some way.
Yes.
It's like, no spiritual decision can be quantified in any physical way. Well, that's just ridiculous.
Correct.
Just ridiculous.
It is.
Of course you have to. I mean, otherwise you would be making decisions that made no sense. You would basically, because any way you apply any logic to it, doesn't matter what it is, it's something that could be quantified in money.
Yes.
And money becomes a very easy way to quantify things. It's like the easiest to read ruler, right?
Yes.
There's
It
other
really
rulers. There are
is,
other ways to do it. But it's like a ruler that has the easiest to read. It's not always the most accurate, right? Because it's a very low resolution ruler. Let's say you have a ruler, you look at it, and it has a mark every foot.
Right. Yeah, you're not going to get precision.
Not going
at
to get
the inch,
precision.
but you're still
Right.
going to get a general.
But it's the easy, and you can just stand it up next to everything, right?
Yep.
And it's like when you run out of a convenience store after you robbed it, and you should be able to identify with this. So after you, joking. When you
Where
run
are you
out of
getting this stuff?
I don't know.
What do you think about me?
So when you run out of a convenience store after you robbed it, they got that ruler next to the door, so that everyone can see how tall you are. But it's not like in the eighths scale, right? Eighth of an inch. It's in the 6 foot, 6'6". It's every 6 inches there's a mark, and it's color coded, and it's so they can say he was this tall, right? And that's kind of how money is in many ways. It's not a very precise measurement, but it's a very easy universal measurement. So
really
like
is,
on one of your posts, I think I did comment on that, and I said that the way I would define money is it's like a container in which, how did I put that? I think I wrote it down here because I knew I'd forget it.
I don't remember. I don't list any. I've blocked you, so no.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
no, I didn't
that's most people. I said I would say that money is a container in which we store scarce resources and translate them into universally recognized and acceptable language. That was my definition.
That's what it is.
Money
It really is the translation of, instead of bartering, you
Yes.
have money, which makes things easier and helps economics, which is a different story.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, it's just a bartering tool.
It's a language.
Yeah, it's a language.
It's exactly what money is. It is a language. It is a way of, and it is a universal translator. And so you can take all kinds of things. So you can say, when you barter, you say, well, how many cameras would you give me for how many eggs? That'd be a barter system.
I'll give you like a tenth of a camera for 3 dozen eggs.
Yeah, exactly, right? So that would be the barter system.
Right.
And that you say, okay, we can make that work. Okay, how many cameras would you give me for 15 minutes of your time? That becomes more complicated because time is more intangible. And it can even be more. How many cameras would you give me for 2 years of friendship?
Yeah.
I mean, now it just gets
It's
harder
just
and
weird,
harder
yeah.
and harder.
That's right.
Right? And when you have
So are you
something,
saying I can buy your friendship? Is
you
that-
can. You actually can. I bet I guarantee you do that post on Facebook.
How much?
Do that post. If I gave you $100,000, will you be my bestie? I know your brother would answer yes.
I'm thinking prodigal son here. No, we won't.
So yeah, I mean, you take then, you can apply money then to these things, and it becomes this universal language in which all these things can get translated down into something we can all agree on, and then everything can be measured that way. And so Christians are reluctant to look at that in any way when it comes to spirituality. And in fact, they're the opposite. They want to divorce. They want to completely section off monetary or financial or economic, even economical considerations. Let's take away finances, just talk about economics. They want to section that off and say that can't have anything to do with spirituality. And anything that's spiritual can't have anything to do with money. And so if money ever gets involved, it's already tainted, it's dirty, it's wrong.
Yeah.
And I know they might not say it quite that way. I'm stating it very strongly.
Yes.
Right? I'm overstating their case.
You're overstating it. But
I'm overstating it. But
the case is there because it's been understated.
That's right. I think they understate their case. I think they don't express just how low of opinion they actually have about money. I think many neo-evangelicals tend to want to hedge their bet when they speak about it. But I think that it bleeds through their actions, how they actually feel about it, right? So they'll take issue if a pastor or a missionary or somebody who lives on offering speaks about money. They're like, they shouldn't talk about money. Well, I think they should. I think it should be transparent.
Yes.
Right? I don't think we should have the wink and the nod about what's going on, right?
Yes.
And it's like, we're pretending we don't care about the money, even though we need the money to live and we're living off offerings, but we're going to pretend that that's not the case. I think that's the wrong approach.
Yeah.
I think it makes money dirty when it doesn't have to be.
Yes. Well, and I take, and this is when I talk to the teens about this, and I'm sure you've got your own approach to it, but I take the parable of the talents and I say, how much do you think a talent's worth? And we actually walk through the math. And right now a talent, I took a low estimate. I think a talent's worth about $1 million.
Wow.
So in its weight in gold. And then I said, how much is that worth? So I said, well, do you have a talent? And I'm not talking about time or anything like that. I'm talking about money. Like, do you have $1 million? And they're like, no, I don't have $1 million. And I said, all right, let's calculate this out. Let's just say you make $10 an hour, 40 hours a week for 40 years of your life. And you do the math and it ends up being like about $1 million. I'm like, God gave you he literally gave you a talent of money. You actually have a talent. Now, what are you going to do with that talent? Do you want to go into management? You could not, let's just put school aside. You can go into management. You're a really hard worker. They're going to put you in management. You're going to make 2x, 3x what you're making, $10 an hour. I know at Bill Miller's, some managers make 6 figures. I mean, you could really multiply your talent, like literally multiply your talent. Now, think about what you can do for the Lord when you have 10 times the amount of money you have right now. And and that type of mentality, I love taking the talent parable and taking it like literally.
Yes.
And saying you actually have $1 million. So the Lord has given you $1 million over the course of your life. Now, what are you going to do with it? And I love applying that.
No, that is a great way of taking that. And I think it's more than just an application, because I actually take those parables literally as their interpretation. Yeah. I know some people don't, and they'll say that the talents are metaphorical for gifts or whatever. But money's also a gift, even that way. I mean, I don't think you can get around it.
And what I would say to that is, sure, you can metaphor it, but you can't say it's not money.
That's right.
You certainly can't say out of that parable that he's not talking about money.
Well, yeah, that's the problem with people who want to go into typology so much, right? They want to find types in the text in order to eradicate the text. It's like we found the type, this is the type, and now we're going to disregard what it actually says. And that's what you can't do with typology if you're going to do types.
Sure.
You have to maintain what it actually says.
Yes.
And in the text, you're right. It is literally money. That's what it is.
That's exactly
And it should be interpreted that way first. And first, it should be seen that way. And to go on to other things is fine, but you have to say, okay, it is money. But I love that. That's a great way of saying it.
And where I end up with this is, and we can talk about like things like minimum wage. I think minimum wage, as an example, is very bad for Christians, because what it does is it artificially inflates what you think your value is. So you're sitting there at work, and say you're making $7.25. I think it's minimum wage right now, but you're really not worth that much. Like, you're working fast food, and you're not doing a good job, and so you're not getting a raise. So they're paying you more than you should be getting paid. You should be making like $4 an hour, just as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're getting mad that you're not getting a raise, but you're not worth that much. Like, you really aren't worth that much.
No, you're not.
And so then you get upset, and then this brings this type of entitlement. And the Bible is very, very clear about, like, we talk about it in Colossians. You mentioned it recently in a podcast about Ecclesiastes. Whatsoever your hand finds to do it with your might. Like, you should be trying to make your company and your boss as much money as possible, and you should be doing it heartily as to the Lord. Like, you should be putting all your might into this, and then your value will increase. Like, you will be more valuable, and that's how you get a raise. But having something like a minimum wage gives you this entitlement. It literally gives you this entitlement, and can really hurt you in terms of advancing, and honestly turn you away from doing spiritual things into this type of victim mentality.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right on that. And yeah, I mean, I've been against minimum wage for a long time now, and for a number of reasons.
Sure.
And I think it's a terrible system. And you're right. A huge problem with minimum wage is, I hadn't thought about that exactly. I think that's really good that it is that you're not worth what you're making already, and then you become entitled, and that breeds, like you're saying, discontent, which is lack of thankfulness. Yes. Right? And it's amazing how that works. You should be more thankful.
Yeah.
Because you're
being paid more.
Yeah, the government's forcing people to pay you twice what you're worth. Yeah. And you should just be like falling over grateful and wanting to do the very best job you can possibly do, but you find that's typically not what happens, is it? Yeah, it's interesting. And for Christians to be that way is really, really bad form.
Yes.
It's real bad form.
It's bad testimony, and it's just not Christian. It's against what God is saying.
It is against everything that the Bible is saying. If anybody is working and knows that they are making more money than they're worth, I think they should feel some guilt about that, some
Sure.
feeling. They shouldn't just take it for granted. Now, I'm not telling you not to do it. I think you ought to get paid. If there's going to be minimum wage laws,
sure,
it's not going away. And I'm not campaigning against it, right? It's like whatever. But what I would tell Christians is, if you're the benefactor of these unjust laws, I think what Paul says is like Paul says, if you're in bondage, don't worry about it. But if you can be free, well, do it.
Yeah.
That's better, right?
Take advantage of it.
Take advantage of it,
right.
And take advantage of it for the Lord,
yes.
not just for yourself, not out of pure selfishness, but take advantage of it for the Lord. Use it to serve God the better, right? And that's what I would tell Christians. Like when one of the questions I get in when I teach on finances is what do I think about Christians on welfare? And that's
interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that's a difficult
hard,
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard because I hate welfare. I really do. I think it's wrong on so many levels, right? I love charity, but I think it ought to be personal and private, not public. And it shouldn't be redistribution of wealth. It should be the giving of wealth, which is different, right?
Very different.
And it shouldn't be by force of death because, welfare exists because of the death penalty. There would be no welfare without a death penalty.
Explain.
Well, the punishment for all crime is death.
Sure, at its highest.
At its highest. Exactly. So if I do not want to give welfare, what is the ultimate end? Death.
Okay. All right.
If it wasn't death, nobody would do it. If death wasn't at the end of not paying your taxes, who would pay their taxes?
I guess that's fair. Or a significant inconvenience.
It would be.
Yeah, sure.
Well, yeah, but it has to end up being in death because there's no other way to impose the inconveniences unless the ultimate is death.
Sure.
Right? The police, you run a stop sign.
That's what people are actually worried about in their head. They don't necessarily go to that conclusion. Right.
I would call it the evolutionary consideration is
Yeah.
survival of the species. Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, that's deep down in your core. If you're an evolutionary biologist, you would say that you've been conditioned by evolution to be worried about death, and so at the end, death is the motivator.
Okay. I can go with you on that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That was what I was always afraid with my dad. I always assumed that if I disobeyed, he would kill me. And it's not something I just kind of like made up in my mind. He told me, "I will kill you." if you do that."
You need to redact that later when we
It's
post
that,
it.
I'll shoot you, boy. I never understood that saying. I'll shoot you. I can shoot you right now. Death is at the end.
And when I was stroking my gun, it seemed to make it made it a whole lot more impactful too.
I hope it was an aerosol gun. All right.
So anyways, you have this, welfare is imposed with such Machiavellian penalties. It has to be, otherwise, it wouldn't happen, right? And so I'm against it for so many reasons, but it's there and it's not going away.
Right.
It's not. It's never going away.
It's not going away.
It's never going away. And Christians that are trying, like spending, or anybody, any Americans that are spending any amount of effort trying to do away with it, I think they're just wasting their
futile.
time.
Yeah.
It's futile. It's not going to happen,
Right.
unless our whole society tanks. Now I can see, I can envision a dystopian future where the economy crashes completely. And we have some form, let's say a huge solar flare. Now that would do it. Mm-hmm. Humongous solar flare like we had back in the year 1000 or whenever it was. Huge. Mm-hmm. And they know, they kind of know what happened then. And I've read that it would just wipe out the earth. Everything would be dead. Yeah. Everything that's silicone was dead.
Then you could change some of the economic.
It would change.
Yeah,
you wouldn't want to. It wouldn't. It would just. I think it would change. All the sexual or the gender equality stuff would be out the window. Yeah. Because there's no more heavy machinery that a woman can handle. Now you're lifting stuff by hand. Yeah. Everything would be just completely upended.
It really changes things.
It
changes
would.
your culture completely.
Everything would
change. It's
change.
kind of how this whole coronavirus has just changed.
Well, it's amazing what this little bit. Yeah,
This
64,000 people dying. Look at the difference in our society and in our world and in nature and everything.
Yeah, imagine a third of the country or more.
Imagine the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Imagine a revelation when it happens, what that's going to mean. A third of the, huge asteroids crashing into the earth and wiping out a third of the sea.
Yeah. It's going to be.
Oh,
it's in those places where you can make those types of real change, but where we're at, even in this economic,
no,
we're not going to change those.
No, that's not going to change. Anyways.
But the concept is, the question is, should Christians be on welfare, or is that okay for them to be sustained on?
See, welfare? I have a long way around things. Nolan likes it. He appreciates it.
I love it.
So it's not going to change. It's not going away. So then, what are Christians to do in that scenario? Well, I think that. The short answer is I think they should take welfare.
Yes.
The ones that need it. I think they should take it.
For the same reason we talked about minimum wage. It's there.
It's
take
there.
Advantage of it. Now, that's not your end state. But
right. No, that's why I said that's a short answer.
Yeah.
Right. I wouldn't want you living on it, staying on it, because it's so bad for you and it's bad for your kids.
Well,
Sure.
Well, the way I see it is that you have this welfare, but I don't think anybody's in a position right now where that's what they have to take. Especially, I say everywhere. I say Texas. I see people.
Oh, you mean because there are jobs available?
There are tons of jobs available.
Well, there were before this.
I think people are still hiring.
They might be.
Cleaning companies are hiring.
I just haven't looked into it, so I don't want to make the claim. But
I see
that's
people
true.
hiring all the time. I mean,
yeah, you're right.
I just don't.
It's about finding work. I think that's the.
I think if you are really looking,
right.
I think you can find a job.
See, I understand it. I agree with you, and I understand what you're saying. My difficulty is when I discuss this with Christians is I don't want to assume and I don't want to judge.
Right.
So I'm willing to allow someone to assess their situation for themselves. So if someone tells me I need it, I just take them at their word. I don't think in my mind, no, I don't think so. I think you're lying. I really do. And it's hard not to. And because I'm thinking, well, I'm hiring and I pay well. I start people off at like 15 an hour. And by law, on most of my jobs, I got to pay even more than that starting out. I got to pay 17 an hour to some people, or to everybody actually, on some jobs that that have what are they called? Prevailing wage jobs. So anything where it gets federal funding, you have to pay prevailing wage. And if you're working in Leander and Austin and other places where they have high prevailing wages, I got to start people off at 17 an hour. So, and I'm hiring. So when someone tells me, I need welfare, I'm thinking, how can you not live on 17 an hour, 15 an hour? I don't see how welfare is not that much.
Right.
And I work like 50 hours a week, and I pay overtime. So you figure 15 hours, $15 an hour at 40 hours, and then plus you're making what, $27 or $27.50 an hour on overtime for 10 hours. That's an extra $270 or $75.
Over about $3,000 a month.
Yes, I mean, it's you're tight. You're budgeting.
It's more than welfare, I think, is what your point is.
Oh yeah, it's more than welfare. You're earning it, and it has an I mean, if you're starting at 15. Let's say 15 paid. Let's say welfare paid 15 an hour, and you could go get a job at 15 an hour. You say, well, why would I get a job? Because welfare's not going up. Right? You're not going to get good at welfare. Yeah, they don't offer you a raise because you're
real good.
Have you gained weight? Good. I'll give you a raise.
You've been
doing a real good job.
Nobody does as good a welfare as you do. We're definitely giving you a raise. We're doing no. So at a job, you actually have potential moving up.
That's right.
and making 20, 30, 40 an hour. And so, that's why. But anyways, my point is I just take people at their word on it.
Yeah, and you have to.
Yeah, you really do. And so I take them at their word. And if they say they need to be on welfare, I say go do it. But what I think is the proper response of Christians is if you're on welfare and we have a welfare system, I don't give charitably to Christians or to people.
Yes.
I just don't. I do not give to charities.
Yes. That
is what the welfare system is for. I am already given to charities.
Through your taxes.
Through my taxes. Yep. I am paying an enormous amount of money, in my opinion, in taxes. And a good portion of that is for these means-tested federal programs.
Yes.
So there they are. That's my charity. It's already done. It's, by force. If it wasn't that, if it was a private system, I would be privately giving to the Red Cross or to whoever's doing these things. I would give to them, Salvation Army or whoever. I know some people are mad at the Red Cross or whoever. I don't know who they're mad at. Trust me, I'm just throwing out examples.
Sure.
Okay? Yeah. I would give to whatever my viewers approved me to give to.
Looks directly at the
I do not want to fight over that. So if you hate the Red Cross, I hate the Red Cross too. They're crazy things that they put on Facebook. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, no. I see what you're saying. It's the concept of should the government be involved in charity or should people be involved in charity, personal charity. I think that's a really good, it's a really very interesting discussion. More political probably than spiritual, but I think your points are valid about it's already provided, so you might as well take advantage of it with the intention.
And if I'm going to pay
it,
get out of it. Yes, and if I'm going to pay it, I want it to go to Christians more than anyone else.
Definitely.
Those are the people I care about. So it's like, that's my view. Even though I despise welfare with all my being, I hope to God I am never, and I don't mean that lightly. I'm not taking his name in vain. I really do pray to God that I am never in a position where I have to do that, where I'm compelled to that. I hope that not. And I sympathize for anyone who is legitimately in that position. Yes. And I am not judging them, right? And people may think, well, you said it was horrible. I think chemotherapy is horrible. But I would take it if I had cancer, and I would want you to take it. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying it's not a good solution.
Correct.
Chemotherapy is a terrible solution, right? It is a therapy designed to kill fast replicating cells because that is what cancer is, right? But so is hair, which is why many people go bald. So is your skin. That's why you lose my dad. It's horrible. It's poison. You're taking poison, hoping you kill the cancer before the poison kills you.
Yes.
Essentially, it's terrible. And so I find welfare is this way. Welfare is like poison for medicinal purposes. That's how I would describe it. It is a poison.
Sure.
It's economic poison for medicinal purposes. And I think there's better ways to do it. I think the Bible had much better solutions. I think Moses came up with a lot better options, at least for an agrarian time. Now, that wouldn't work so much exactly. I mean, I know people that want to take like the law of Moses and apply it directly, and that's just, there's not that many farm fields around us anymore where you could leave the corners unharvested.
Yeah, right.
And people could go in and glean. It's like, how many fields are there anymore? It's just, it's a whole nother world. But the principles are good, right? The principle was that people with wealth had to leave some stuff laying around that you could, with effort, obtain for yourself.
Correct.
But you had to do the effort. The government didn't make you harvest it and take it to them, or make you harvest it, give it to them, and then they pass it out like a goodie bag. Right. That didn't work that way. You had to actually go to the field, and if you read Ruth, you find out what hard work gleaning was.
It was hard. Oh yeah,
it was backbreaking, hard work.
Yep.
But you lived, you survived, and by surviving, you got the opportunity to thrive. There's always that chance. Then, if you can live, then you can get ahead. There's a possibility.
Yep.
What do you think about UBI?
What is that?
UBI, Universal Basic Income. Andrew, have you followed Andrew Yang at all? Are you a Yang ganger?
I have not followed. I know what he does.
He is.
But I don't know what that is.
UBI?
Explain it to me.
All right, so UBI means, excuse me, UBI means that the government will give you a what would you call it? A minimum wage, not minimum wages, but a minimum amount of money that you get. Everybody gets it. So Yang's proposal was $1,000 a month. Every single adult in America. Doesn't matter how much money you make. Whether you make, it doesn't matter. Whether you're unemployed, homeless, every single person, every adult in America gets $1,000.
Okay.
And that's it. You get the $1,000 and it's in cash in your bank, deposit in your account. You do whatever you want with it. If you want to buy drugs with it, you do it. If you want to buy beer, it's not food stamps. It's just cash. You can just spend it, right? And that was his big thing. That was his big proposal. And I know that there was a lot of conservatives really upset about that. They did not like that at all. What do you think about it?
Trying to think about it from a spiritual standpoint. I mean, it goes back into a lot of the things that we've talked about in general, which is you should work for what you have. I don't know. I haven't given it much thought in general, but I guess my take on it is, if it's not earned, then we've talked a little bit about welfare, but those types of proposals are not good. They're not helpful, and they're honestly not biblical. I don't know. I don't have any other thought on it.
Well,
what are your thoughts on
it? Real quick, won't that just make a pack of gum cost $1,000?
No,
Not
actually,
necessarily.
No, not necessarily. And it might affect inflation a little. I mean, probably you'd have a little bit of inflation because there'd be more money to be spent.
Sure.
Right. So then prices will go up a little, but it's not that much more. You got to think $1,000 a month is not a lot of money.
It's not a living wage. It's not living.
It's not living, but it's not dying.
Correct.
And I mean that like not hyphen dying. It's not dying. That's what it is. The idea is. So Milton Friedman proposed this a long time ago, back in the 70s, and he called it a negative income tax. That was his proposal. It's the exact same thing. It's the same thing. And my problem with Yang, well, he's a Democrat, so he's pro-abortion, so I can't support him on that, on that measure. But he sold it all wrong. He should have sold this to conservatives. He really should have ran in the Republican Party. He should have got himself right on abortion and ran as a Republican. He could have won. He could have won, maybe not this year against Trump in a primary, but he could have won next year, I think, if he could have sold this right. Because he has, in my opinion, it's the right idea. Now, it's not that I want this. Let's say in an ideal world, bad idea. UBI, bad idea in an ideal world where everybody pays for themselves and has a job. That's the ideal world. But let's live in the world we're at now.
Yeah.
The problem with welfare is it promotes unemployment.
Yes.
If you're on welfare and you go get a job, you lose your welfare.
Yes.
Even if your job is paying you more, you're getting welfare without working.
Without working.
Right.
Precisely, yes.
So if you calculate welfare by the hour, it's an infinite wage.
Yes.
Because you do zero work, and then any amount of money you get for that would be infinite then, right? It's divided by zero error.
Yes.
Right? And so it doesn't matter how much you get paid at your job.
Yes.
Your mind says, but I can get this much for free
Yes.
for not working. Just do whatever I
why
want.
not?
So
Yeah.
why would I? So that's the
Sure.
problem with our system right now. Our means-tested welfare system, you lose it when you go to work. The way in negative income tax with Milton Friedman and UBI, or he called it a freedom dividend is Yang's terminology, but it's UBI. The way it works for Yang was it replaces everything.
Now I see what you're saying. I didn't know it was on top. I thought it was on top.
Well,
of
there's
welfare.
different ways, but
Sure,
for
yeah.
Yang, it replaces everything. So his proposal was, you get to choose. If you're already in the system, you're in the welfare system, you're getting food stamps, you're getting housing, you're getting all these things, you're in the system, you can choose. You can keep what you're on, as long as you want, or you can switch over to the freedom dividend or the UBI or the negative income tax. And you can get $1,000 a week that's all you get. That's a month, sorry, $1,000 a month or $2,000, whatever it is, that amount. You get that much in your account in cash. Now, I think a lot of people would switch.
Yep.
And it's guaranteed. Everybody gets it.
Yes.
Right. And if you're not in the system, you're no longer the other side's not available. That's shut down.
Yeah.
You're only grandfathered into the welfare system.
Okay.
Everybody is on this that's not in welfare. So you're either on the old welfare system, grandfathered in, or you're with the rest of the country, whether you're making $10 million a day or whether you're making $2 an hour. It doesn't matter. You get your freedom dividend, you get your UBI in your account. And that's what the government gives you.
Yep.
That's the end of it. And then you can go get a job because you don't lose your money.
Correct.
You still keep that. You can go get a job. So it promotes work.
Yes.
Because it's not enough to discourage you
I see what
from
you're
working.
saying. It's a don't die dividend.
It's a don't die dividend. That's right. We want to make sure you don't die.
Yes.
So you got enough money that you could stay alive. And hopefully that will encourage you to go get a job.
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant. I thought it was brilliant when at first when I read Milton Friedman, I'm like, that was the one thing I struggled with him on. I'm like,
The negative, yeah. I've actually read. So now that I understand, I thought you were talking about this was on top of welfare, but now that I understand, kind
well,
of.
that's the fear, right? That it would become that.
Correct.
And so it would have to be implemented very carefully and with constitutional amendment of some sort. I mean, I understand there's a lot of problems with implementing this,
Yes.
but just as a theory, as an economic theory,
Yes.
financial theory, I think it's brilliant. I think it's a great idea.
Yes.
And I don't understand why conservatives are against it. They're like, you're giving people money for nothing. We're already doing that. We're
Yes.
already doing that. And we're doing it in the worst way possible.
Yeah, where it doesn't promote work.
Does not. It promotes not working, right?
Yes.
It's not that it doesn't positively
Yes.
promote work.
It actually
negatively
negatively-
impacts work.
That's right.
That's right. And marriage. Why do we have such a high unemployment, especially amongst the African American community? Because if you get married, you lose all that stuff.
I didn't know that.
Yes. If you get married to your baby daddy, you lose everything, practically. They will not marry. Promotes promiscuity and having more kids because you get more money for the more kids you have. That's right. So it promotes,
know that.
our system is promoting the worst possible behaviors, our current system.
Yeah.
And we're not going to get rid of it,
No.
right? So the only way forward in my mind is we have to replace it with something else that doesn't have the detrimental effects that we already have. It's like the whole minimum wage thing you're talking about. I don't know if you watched the primaries, last primaries when Carson was running, Ben Carson.
I think I watched one of them, but yeah. What did he say?
So in the first debate, he came out and he said he was against minimum wage. Ben Carson did, which I was all for. I was like, yes, I would have voted for him.
Yeah.
Loved him. And he came out and he says, I'm against minimum wage. It's terrible. It's ruining the youth because that's who it kills.
Correct.
Minimum wage, they ought to just call it what it is. The law ought to be called It's Illegal to Hire an 18-Year-Old Act. That's what they ought to call that law because that's what it is.
Yes.
It's illegal to hire an 18-year-old act because
More
it means
or less, yeah.
yeah, whatever.
Very few non-youth are.
You can't take the
making
risk.
waves.
I mean, how do you know?
Yeah.
You can't give people an IQ test at work. You can't IQ test them.
Yes.
You can't hardly test them in any way. So you're just rolling the dice. So it's like, why would you hire someone who's 18? That's just,
Sure.
you know, I mean, 9 out of 10 times you're going to get screwed with it. So what are you going to do? So he came out and says, I'm against minimum wage, but it's not going away. So I want to have a 2-tier system. I want to have a system where you can be not under minimum wage and get paid whatever it is someone's willing to pay you and whatever you're willing to work for. And then I'll have another system, another part where you get paid $15 an hour, minimum wage. Now, there's different ways you can implement that, but I thought that was just genius. Fantastic, simple, brilliant, wonderful solution. And then he backed away from it, and he tanked right after that. He had a creative, brilliant solution to a really complicated problem that I thought was a great. I was like, oh,
would it be like where you could opt in?
Well, that would be one way, right? You could opt in, which would be real interesting to see how many people opted into what. I would opt into the no minimum wage.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, of course, I don't make minimum wage.
Right.
Most people don't.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Right. And then the other way is you could, but then that's hard. The way I thought about it, because I put a lot of thought into, as soon as he said it, it's like, mind blown. And so I put a lot of thought into how you could, develop that policy. And my solution was it could be based on dependency. So if you're claimed as a dependent, you do not have minimum wage because you're a youth. You're a kid. You're living at home.
Sure.
You don't need a living wage. Yeah. You need gas money, right? And the less you had, the better for you. Yeah. You'll get in less trouble. So yeah, you would be in the no minimum wage. If you're claimed as a dependent on taxes, you do not fall under minimum wage law. And if you're claimed as a dependent, you fall under minimum wage law, $15 an hour. Minimum wage law for anyone who's claimed as a dependent, which hardly would affect the economy at all for the people that are working now. How many people are making minimum wage that don't work at a restaurant?
Yeah, I don't.
It's hardly at all.
Right. It's not.
I don't know anybody.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't pay. You're not going to hire someone for $7.25 an hour if they're not a kid working at a restaurant with crazy hours, right? They get their hours, whatever it is, for school.
That's true.
Yeah, and that's what you're getting. And so you trade off, which is what, again, going back to economics, that's what the trade-offs are. It's like, hey, I don't want to work 50 hours a week. I want to work 20 hours a week, and I want to work on Mondays, Thursdays, and Sundays. And the employer's like, well, I can't pay you $20 an hour for someone who's going to show up that amount of time.
Yes. Right?
So we're going to trade off, and I'll pay you $9. Hey, that's good. That's what I need of money, and that's good. I like that, and I get the hours I want. Yeah. And so yeah, I mean, I thought, man, that's a fantastic idea. And if you could do, and that was one way you could do is do it, but who's a dependent. But then you'd see who's lying to claim that they are dependents so that they don't fall under minimum wage. I think there'd be more people trying to not be under minimum wage than trying to be under it.
Yep.
I think you'd see an exodus away from it.
Yeah,
definitely, because you can get into the jobs.
Yep. You
can go to any job that has tremendous upside to it, but a very low downside. So the entry barrier is very low wages to get in.
Yes.
But the upside, like the financial sector, used to be unpaid internships.
Yep.
If you wanted to get into Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs or whatever, you had to work for free for what, a year or
something
whatever
like
it was. Yeah, you had to work for free.
Yep. The
only way you get in.
But then once you're in, it pays it for itself very quickly.
That's right. And that's what college is.
That's what college is.
That's exactly what it is. You are paying. It's worse than that because you're actually paying for it. Yeah. It's like going to do. It's a paid internship, but you're paying.
Yes.
That's what college is. It's a paid internship. It's a reverse paid internship. That's exactly what it is. That's precisely what it is. And so we already know it works. We already know people will flood into these things if the upside is good.
Yes.
And so when you look at a company and they say, hey, we hire people at $3 an hour, just enough money to get you so you can get to work and you have to live at your parents' house on their couch or whatever, but you come to work. But the upside is in 3 years, you'd be making 6 figures.
Yeah.
I'll take it. That's great.
That's what college did for me.
That's exactly like I said. Yeah. And how much did you pay for that?
We'll have a conversation later. I graduated without any debt. But
excellent. That's great. That's real good.
A blessing for my parents plus scholarships, but that's a different story.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was very interesting to me when I see how Christians and especially conservatives can be so against some of these things. And it's because I think they're reacting viscerally. They're hearing, give people $1,000, and it's a visceral reaction against it. And they're not putting any thought into it, not economic thought, certainly not financial thought, and they're not putting any political thought into it. It's like, they're idealists. That's the problem with Christianity. It's not a problem with Christianity. It's a problem with Christians. I misspoke.
Sure.
The problem with Christians is they're idealists. They want the world to be ideal.
Yeah.
Deep down, they really do. They want the kingdom. They want the millennial reign in its essence. They want that idealist world. And it makes them it's why I am very skeptical of Christian politicians. I don't think they have the nastiness it takes to do the job.
Yeah, or the compromise, which is really what it is. You're so idealistic that you're unwilling to. I mean, like, I'm not belittling this at all, but with abortion, like, if you take the idealistic stand, it's gonna be and don't get anywhere. Whereas if you made I'm not saying this is the right thing, but if you made a compromise and got it limited, well, wouldn't that be better than not taking the stand and not getting it done at all? I'm not saying that it's okay or right.
No, it's a hard decision.
Very difficult thing.
Oh yeah, it's brutal.
But it is, like you're saying, you're not living in a perfect world.
I think that's why Trump has gotten more done on abortion than anyone else. Because I don't think he has any principles.
Yeah.
I know people are going to hate that I say that, but I really don't.
Yeah.
I just don't think he has any real principles. I think he's a complete pragmatist. And I think, you'll say, well, he's against abortion. I think he is.
Yeah.
But I think he's against it unprincipled, without principle. I think he's against it economically. I really do. I think his is an economic opposition to it. It's a pragmatic opposition to it. It's killing the economy. It's killing welfare. It's killing Social Security. Abortion is destroying Social Security, right? We're going to be insolvent because of abortion. You can't kill that many people that are supposed to be. It's like Walmart says we're going to kill 10% of our customer base. Well, why would you do that? You're killing yourself. You're killing the company, right?
They're killing the taxes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, from an economic. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and so I really do think it's more of a pragmatical view for Trump. But he gets in and I think he's accomplished more to the end of abolishing abortion than anyone else, any other very conservative Christian-like president has done.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I hope he goes all the way. I hope he gets it. If he can get one more term and Ginsburg retires or passes away, then you're looking at most likely a overwhelmingly conservative Supreme Court. And then the states are going to flood the court with cases.
Try to overturn
They're going to overturn Roe v. Wade, which then puts it back where you have states that are pro and states that are con. And I'm not sure that's a good solution politically because, that's what we had with slavery.
Yeah, right.
We had pro and con states, and then it resulted in war.
Civil war, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think your point that you're making about idealism is important because we do have to take things practically. And ultimately you do want the idealistic, but you're living in the world. And if you can come to compromise in terms with people and honestly find points of agreement, and from like even a salvation standpoint, it's amazing how if you find your points of agreement, your common ground, how much they'll listen to you and let you like actually speak into their lives.
Yeah.
So when it comes to things like salvation and their mind, they'll actually turn and consider what you have to say because you're willing to not be ideal and meet them where they're at on other things.
You're right.
Difficult things.
No, you're absolutely right. It's disarming. It's about disarming people.
Right.
I try to do that when I talk to anybody who I find is very antagonistic or leans antagonistic towards the gospel. Is the first thing I'll do, and I know I did this. I kind of spoke to your brother this way when I had the podcast with him. And it wasn't that I designed it. I just do this. And what I do is I will right out of the gate point out all the mistakes I think I see in Christianity, all the problems I see with Christians. And it's just very disarming. It's like very hard to not let your guard down when, I'll go through 15 or 20 minutes of everything I find objectionable in Christians. And Christians are like, why are you doing this? What are you saying? Yeah. You're letting the cat out of the bag. Yeah. But it's like, it's just how I talk to people who are skeptical or antagonistic. And it's disarming. It's like, Let's put it all out. Let me put my cards on the table. I know that there are a lot of issues with Christians. Yes. There's a lot of problems with traditional Christianity that should be acknowledged. I'm acknowledging them. Now let's talk about your views. And they become much more, I find they become more honest and more receptive. Yep. And we actually did a podcast last night that I'm going to release in a few days where I talked about this. But the gospel does not need to be right in every point. And that's hard for Christians to hear.
In what way, or what do you?
In almost any way. So here's how I do it. And I don't want to go too much because I went in it in the other podcast. But basically the point is, my view is, the gospel is an incredibly robust message. Very repetitive, robust message that you can. It is astounding to me. I have not plumbed the depth to which you can strip the gospel of truths and it still be effective. Think about people who have heard a gospel that from practically any reasonable perspective was a very incomplete gospel, and they get saved.
Sure. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yes.
How old were you when you got saved?
I was 5.
5. How much of the gospel did you understand?
I knew nothing. Yeah.
Exactly. And yet you got saved.
Yeah. Right.
So how much do you have to know? Apparently not very much.
A small amount of it. Yeah. That's what Jesus says, faith like a child. I'm not saying necessarily for salvation.
No, yeah.
Yeah, he puts that out there.
Right. Like faith and then the grain of mustard seed and all these different Right. So the idea is, think about people. The example that came out that it was Daniel who was with me last night, but he brought it up. But there was a guy that I was preaching to in Querétaro back when I lived there, and he was an atheist. And he'd come down. In fact, it was Stephen's father-in-law now.
Okay.
Hugo Moreno. Yeah. So he would come to the preaching, and he would listen to the preaching, and he was never antagonistic. He was an atheist, but he was a seeker, right? He wanted to know.
He wants to know truth.
He wanted to find God. He wanted to believe in God. He just couldn't. Yeah. And so he would talk to me. We'd talk for hours. He'd go home, and he had a friend in his neighborhood who he would go and he'd repeat everything I had said to him, tell it to him. Obviously not perfectly. Sure. Who knows how it actually came out the other end, right? But he'd repeat it to him. Well, this guy, after a couple weeks, comes in and says, "Hey, I got saved." And he's still not saved.
Yeah, Hugo's not saved, but this other guy.
No, he's upset now because this guy got saved by the message he preached it. He was the only witness in this guy's life. It wasn't like he was one of others.
Right,
he was the witness. Yeah. He's an atheist, does not know how to believe in God. He wins this guy with some gospel that he filtered through his atheist mind and told it to him, not believing it to be true. That is an amazing message. It is. Any message that can filter through so many layers of a filter, right? Of a substrate. So many layers of substrate and get deformed to a point where you and I would say it's not hardly recognizable and still result in salvation. Yes. I'm blown away by that.
Yeah, that's right.
That is like the most fascinating thought I've had in such a long time. It really is. It's like, it never occurred to me till just recently, and I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking, this is amazing. Yes. This is why I think Paul is enamored with the gospel. The gospel is like the greatest thing on earth. Think about this.
Yes.
Take anything else. Take math. That is the gospel for evolutionary biologists. It is math. Sure. Math is their Bible. It is their message, right? You take the math and you change one symbol anywhere in that formula, and it all falls apart.
Yes.
All of it. Take anything you want, and almost anything you can apply this to, it doesn't work, and it works for the gospel.
Yes.
And so then it's like, well, then I'm not afraid then of it getting diluted.
Yes.
I'm just not afraid of that. Yep. That doesn't mean that I'm not careful of how I speak it. I'm not saying that Christians shouldn't study it and know it well and be able to explain it properly and try to do it at the fullest you can. Obviously. Yes. If the gospel diluted to 1% is so good.
What could it be at?
What is it as at 90%,
sure.
Right? It could, I would assume. So yeah, I'm not suggesting that therefore we become careless with it, but I'm suggesting we be confident with it.
Yes.
We can be confident with the gospel.
Right.
How did you hear the gospel? I have found that it hardly matters at all how they heard it. It's amazing.
It really is.
It's an incredible thing.
It really has changed. What you're saying has actually changed my approach to witnessing to people. I kind of start with, where are you at? Tell me your story. What are you seeking? What are you looking for? And some people are just like, they're ready. And I'm thinking, I didn't have to do anything. They were already like, whatever happened before, they're basically ready for it. And I'm like, well, just here's how you should pray. Let's pray about it. I'll pray, and then you pray and cry out to the Lord. And I didn't have to explain a whole lot because they already, however the Lord dealt with them, He had already dealt with them about it. Or the things that I deal with them are like very simple things, and it's not the entire gospel. It's just the pieces that they may not know or understand. And it has resulted in a lot of fruit. Actually winning people to the Lord, just taking them where they're at and being okay with it not being everything. Like, by the way, let me take you down Romans Road, we can talk about that. But before you get saved, let me walk you through all these verses so you understand. And to an extent, like, they're going to get there once they're saved. That's what like Romans is about. It's amazing book. But the gospel at its core is so simple and so appealing to people that you can, like this guy who gets saved from an atheist giving him a testimony, it penetrates through all that.
It really does.
Really amazing.
It's an amazing message, and it's to the credit of obviously Jesus Christ who designed it, and to the apostles who formulated it, if you will. It's not the right word, but they instantiated that design right into a writing that is incredibly robust, and that's the issue of how the Bible's written. This is why I've pulled back completely, 100%. I've done a complete 180 on the whole issue of Bible versions. I'm still a proponent of the King James Bible in English. I think it's a very good translation. I think that overall it's probably the best one we have to date. I don't think we have a better one yet. Maybe the New King James a little better in that it's a little easier to understand, which is my problem now. My problem with the King James Bible now is that when I read it to like my workers, whenever I talk to my workers, they
glaze over.
They don't understand it. These are people
same
who want
thing with
to.
our teens. It's the same. Like, if we try to have them read it, they're not reading it sentences. They're just reading the word, and it's very monotonous.
It's like me reading Greek.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Not as bad, but
you don't know how to put the right emphasis on words or sentences. It's
right.
Very,
They're
very
not
difficult.
following the grammar.
Yes.
It's not the words. See, people say, well, you can tell them what the words mean. It's not the words.
Yeah.
The words, really, English hasn't changed that much, really.
Sure.
I mean, there are some big words, right? But there's some big words in your proctology report, too. So
that's fair.
Yeah. So, but it's not the words. It's the structure. It's how it's structured. I love it. I read it. It makes perfect sense. I'm like, this is the way the Bible should sound.
You grew up on it.
Right, exactly.
King James appeals to me because that's what I grew up on.
Right, exactly.
Sure.
I read it. Makes perfect sense. I have no interest in any other translation because I don't need it. I understand the needs for them, though, because I have people that work for me that have tried to read the Bible, and they try the King James, and they're wanting to understand it. These aren't just people that are doing it. They want to very badly, and they're reading, and they don't understand anything. They get themselves another Bible that's more paraphrased, or there's different ways, but they'll get another translation, read it, and understand it better. So what's more important? To read a Bible you don't understand, or read a Bible that you think is more accurate, or read a Bible that's less accurate, but you understand more?
Yeah, you think it's the latter.
I think it's the latter. Now, I wouldn't have always thought that. There was a time in my life where I would say, no, it's like a mystical, magical power that these translations, that this Bible has, the King James Bible, and even if you don't understand it, if you'll read it, God will make you understand it. Yeah. I think that's nonsense.
And I guess where I would take that is, we, like this boot camp we do, we partner with another church. They've really taken we partner with multiple churches, but another church, they have some definitely differing beliefs than what we do. And I'm thinking, well, do they believe the gospel? And I don't remember which Bible version they might use King James. I don't think they use King James. I think they use NIV. But I'm thinking, do they love the Lord? Are we on the same mind with this, at least with this camp? And we're trying to save souls, and we're on the same mind on these very core things. You've got to be willing to overlook and put those things aside. You can have those conversations if you want, but there's some bigger things at stake.
Yes.
And these are the things that we can come together on and need to come together. Like, I need you for this, and you need me for this. And that thing is very important and helped me get over some of those other, what I thought were very essential type doctrines that I realized that they believe in Jesus and they believe in salvation the way I believe it. That's bar none the most important thing. And I can put a lot of those other things aside, including Bible versions.
I agree. See, that's one of the issues. There's a number of things that push me into that issue on Bible translation, my position that I now tentatively hold, right? Because and this is the thing. I know people get upset. They're like, "Oh, you change all the time." I sure hope so.
Yes.
I sure hope so. If I'm not changing, you need to check my core temperature, and I'm probably not alive anymore. So I hope I am changing. But
That's right.
But where I'm tentatively at now, a lot of that was because I'm thinking two things that were interesting to me. One is I'm thinking I can't invite anybody hardly to preach at our church because they all use a different Bible version. Mm-hmm. That's a problem to me. It's like, I really wanted to get James Tour. Do you know who James Tour is? Mm-mm. Oh, you gotta look up James Tour. He's a nano. What is it? Nano.
Oh, I remember hearing you talk about Scott.
Nanotechnology scientist.
I know you're talking.
He's a chemical engineer. No, not engineer. He's a chemical scientist. He's a doctorate in chemistry. He's a doctor in chemistry, and he makes all those little nano machines. He won the contest. Like they had a car. You had to make a car that you could drive, like with a beam of light, steer it, and his won by
days.
Well, nanomiles.
Wow.
Yeah, nanomiles. I mean, it's incredible the stuff he's doing. And he's a Jew. He's Jewish.
Okay.
And he's a believer in Jesus. Very strong believer in Jesus. Like preaching it from the lecture pulpit lectern on his lectures in school and college.
Yeah, he's not just passive about it.
No.
Very active. Sure.
Very, very strong about it. Yeah. But I really wanted to get him to speak in our church. He declined. He says he doesn't have time. But I tried. Yeah. I wanted to. But obviously he's not going to read from the King James. I know. I've heard him read. He's not going to read from that. So what? So now we're not going to listen to James Tour. Or you're going to insist he read from your whatever translations. You're asking him, please come preach at our church, but you have to read from this Bible, from this translation of the Bible. Yeah. And he's looking at you thinking, you're an idiot. Yeah. I wouldn't personally, if I was him, I would say, you're nuts. I'm not coming, and you're not going to tell me what Bible to read from, just like I would do now. If you were to invite me to your church and say, but you have to read from X translation.
The Message, right?
Yeah, whatever. Whatever. And I'm like, no. Or you say you have to read from the King James, and I don't want to. I'd say you're not going to. I'm going to. If you don't like the translation I read from, well then don't invite me.
Right.
Well, that's the position I'm in, and I'm like, we are cutting ourselves off from increasingly more and more very profitable viewpoints in Christianity. I think very profitable. Like James Tour, I would love to get him. Hopefully one day I can. I would love him to come and speak in the church on the things he talks about because he has an incredibly important viewpoint that you're not going to get anywhere else.
Right.
I mean, I can listen to his stuff and then try to repeat it, but it's not the same thing. It's not at all the same.
Yeah.
Right? And so then we're left with inviting who? Well, that was one problem I had. Right? And so we're just cutting ourselves off. And the other thing is they say, and this is one thing, it's the more moderate KJVO people will say, we can have, the King James could use a revision. Most of them will acknowledge that. Sure. It's like it needs to be updated. It could use a revision. But then they say, but we can't do it now. Because now there's this huge war raging over Bible versions.
Yeah, so if we do it, then we're just shooting ourselves in the foot.
Right. It's like no one will accept it.
Yeah.
But then it's like, but who's waging the war?
You're waging the war.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
No one else is.
Yep.
No one else is waging any war against any Bible translation that I know of. I went and I listened. Do you know who Daniel Wallace is? Daniel Wallace is one of the leading professors at Dallas Theological Seminary, and he's the foremost Christian expert on New Testament manuscripts. Okay. So he's way up
there.
Very
prominent, sure.
Very prominent in both the academic circles with the likes of Bart Ehrman, who's the other leading expert on him, who's not a Christian. He's an atheist or agnostic. And then Daniel Wallace. They're basically, equals in that field. So on the academic issue, he's very high up, and he's pretty high up in the spiritual side as far as being a teacher and a believer at Dallas Theological. I decided to go and listen to what he had to say about textual criticism and about, the critical text and the new translations. Completely changed my mind.
Well, what did he say?
It was so reasonable. So he starts off. He's going to tell you he's highly involved in the development of the critical text. So that's his bias, right?
Sure.
So he starts off, and the way he starts off his thing is tell you every Christian should own 3 Bibles. Every Christian should own 3 Bibles. The first Bible you should own is the King James Bible. Now you go to the other side and find that type of a statement. Mm-hmm. Every Christian should own 3 Bibles. The first Bible you should own is the NIV. No.
Yeah, of course.
Never going to hear anything like that. Yeah. That's his stand. He is not anti-King James Bible. He loves it. He thinks it's the best Bible of its class. Mm. And by class, I mean he says his
From an
view,
academic.
So his view is, and I'm not saying I've subscribed to this. I'm not actually in agreement with his position. I'm not a critical text guy at all.
Sure.
I still think that the received text is better for us. I think the King James Bible is better than the New American Standard as a translation. So I'm not agreement with his position, but the moderacy of it, his moderate approach to it, his very positive approach to these issues, and looking at the way he looked at it, it convinced me that I was wrong. Not necessarily he was right, but that I was wrong.
Yeah, it's not about the position. I think it was, like you said, the moderacy behind it. This is a really important point. It has to go with, like, even these other type of not just Bible versions, but other types of doctrines that I've seen, like this church that we partner with. They're Pentecostal to some extent, right? Mm-hmm. They do some of that stuff, and it's like, do you really want to let that divide you from the value that they have to bring, spiritual value they have to bring to the table? And same thing with all these, like you said, these other churches and places with different versions.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, but is their message, what are they preaching? Like, what are they saying? And is the gospel getting promoted, and are people getting saved? Well, why would you be against that? I think
exactly.
That's a really,
and like
really
in your case, what's worse? Is it worse for these kids to get saved and think they speak in tongues, or not get saved and do drugs?
Precisely. Yes.
What are we saying? We're going to have less impact because we're worried they might think they can speak in tongues. Is that really the end of the world? As much as I hate the whole Pentecostal movement, right? I don't hate the Pentecostals.
Yes.
I don't like the doctrine, but I can live with it. It's like, whatever,
Yes.
I appreciate I appreciate a world that I live in. My world, not the whole world, but my little world is persecution free. And so I don't have to rub elbows with them too much.
Yes.
And still I can still be friendly with them. I pray for them, support their ministry, in the sense saying, I hope they succeed. I hope they win millions of people, as many souls as they possibly can pull in. Absolutely. And I don't have to be in the meeting with them while they're doing it.
Yes.
It's wonderful. In a persecution world, that's not the case.
True.
If you're in a persecution world, you meet with whoever you can, and you get over this stuff pretty quick.
Yep.
And you're like,
That's
you know what?
true.
Let's just try to have the Lord's Supper and not get killed. Yes. That's our goal today.
Yep.
And so, I don't live in that world.
Very different.
Very different. So I don't live in that world, and so I have some freedom to be a little more discerning about which church I'm meeting in, right? Yeah. But like what you're saying, you partner up on a certain activity. Some people would have a real issue with that, and I might have at one time. Now I don't. Now it's like, you look at what the goals are and the merits of them, and you weigh them, and then you got to decide what's the greater good and what's the greater evil at the also.
True.
And balance that.
Yeah, economics.
Yeah.
Sorry. Oh, I don't want to go back there.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Really
No, that's what it is. It is.
Decision.
It's an economic perspective. It's exactly what it is. We had a message and it got retracted, but I thought it was a good question they asked. So they asked, what do we do about the verse where Jesus says we shouldn't seek to be rich? And then they corrected it and said that it was actually Proverbs that said it, which is a big difference.
Sure.
Right? It's extreme. It is an important difference, and I'm not trying to be tic-tacky or
no, it's very
shove
important.
it down.
Well,
but
it
it
goes
is
kind of what we were discussing earlier about the love of money before this.
Oh,
love
yeah,
of money is the
yeah.
root of all evil. It's very.
What do you think about that? The love of money is the root of all evil verse.
I think it's consistently used out of context.
So what do you think is the context?
See if I can formulate this correctly. I think if I think the point is, if your value is in the possessions, the worldly possessions money can buy, and you're not focused on spirit, like if it's leading you toward physical things and not spiritual things, that's the problem. And the counter I would say to that is, the more money I have, literally the more money I have, the more spiritual things I've been able to do for, like, more things I've been able to do for the Lord. So how could I say, a lot of people think money is the root of all evil, and it's very clear it's the love, and I believe it's with a bent toward the physical possessions. What do you think?
So I think that I agree with your interpretation. They're saying his volume's a little low. Why don't you turn him up a little bit?
I can yell if you want. No.
You guys maybe bring that just a little bit
Sure.
closer to yourself there. About a fist away is where you need to be. I agree with your interpretation of it, and I think pretty much anyone who really looks at it says, yes, that's what he's saying. But I think the problem with neo-evangelicals, you turned me way down, there you go. I think the problem with neo-evangelicals is that they have a position, like I said before, that being rich is bad, being poor is spiritual. Now, some of them have both of those views. Some of them have just the one, the spiritual.
Sure.
Poverty is spirituality. Now, they won't say it, but they live it.
Yes.
Right? They show it how they live. They show it how they make their decisions. They show it in how they react to people who do well in life.
Yes.
Right? That they have a lot of money, but I choose to be spiritual. And for them, it's a dichotomy. And it's a false dichotomy. And they use that verse out of context. They use that verse to substantiate, right, that position.
It justifies
that view.
Yeah.
And it is a socialistic view. It's what it is. It is. If they understood economics, they'd understand that this view is not a spiritual view. It is not a spiritual view. It's not a biblical view. So there is a danger in wanting to be wealthy. The Bible,
Certainly,
Paul points it
yes.
out. Proverbs points it out. He says, those that would enrich, Paul says, those that would enrich themselves will be, how does he say?
I know he's brought to poverty, right?
Well, no, Paul says they're pierced through with many sorrows. They'll be pierced through with many sorrows. That follows that verse.
I was searching for it.
Godliness with contentment is great gain. Those
yeah.
that will be rich will be pierced through with many sorrows. Yep. Something I know it better in Spanish than I know in English.
And those that are wanting.
Right. So wanting wealth, and anybody who is wealthy will tell you this. If your goal in business is to be wealthy, you're going to fail.
Yes.
You're going to fail. Maybe you'll be wealthy, but you will fail in life. They'll tell you this. You cannot, and this is what poor people don't understand. They don't understand money. That's why they're poor. Big reason why, this is why I preach about money, because a big reason why people are poor is because they do not understand money. Right? They don't understand money. They don't understand finances. They don't understand business. If they understood these things, they'd be well on their way to being wealthy.
Yes.
Well on their What's his name? They not hearing us? Or is it their sound? Oh, I think they're just saying that they didn't hear us answer. Okay. Whoever's writing to us, Tekel. That's Wade and found wanting. Now they're putting it in. Now they're putting it in Chaldean. Tekel, that's their screen name. You can tell us if you hear us now. If not, let us know so we can work on the sound. I hear it, but I don't know if. Do you hear it? Are you on the actual YouTube?
No, it's. Oh, okay.
I don't know if they're hearing us.
There
Anyway.
was a problem with YouTube. I think it's back on now.
Oh, we're back on?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're good
Yeah.
now.
We had
Little.
we don't have great internet here, so our streaming, I probably should. Let me do this. Turn that Wi-Fi off, and I'm on. Yeah, that's fine. Anyways, let me turn this one off too. Just give us 1 second here. Turn off some of these Wi-Fis, make sure I'm not using it. We usually have to tell everyone in the house to turn off all the Wi-Fi.
They weren't able to hear your answer. You think you can go real quick and just kind of give a summary of your answer, or just
Which answer?
The Tekel, the one about
being well? Well, we're basically in the middle of that. I don't. See, my answers are robust. You can tune in pretty much at any point in time.
And you'll still get it.
And you'll get the gist of what I'm saying. And they go for a good while. So, you get a good 5-minute robust answer where you can just like tune in and pick it up. I like reiterate it. And
I think the question was about the rich.
Yeah. About, what about not being rich? So what the scriptures are telling us is that we shouldn't, and this is, and like I said, it matters that you're looking at Jesus to Proverbs. It's not an insignificant distinction.
Sure.
Proverbs is telling you in business, like almost like a businessman telling you, look, there's some danger to wanting to be rich, and you should not want that. You should not desire that. But this is a practical approach to it, right? Yes. And this is coming from the richest man on earth, possibly at that time.
Yeah, Solomon. Yes.
Solomon, exactly.
Yeah.
This is coming from a very wealthy family who is working to increase their wealth, who God promised to give wealth to.
Yes.
Right? Because he didn't seek it.
Right. Yeah, right.
Right?
It comes full circle.
He's like, what do you want? Wealth or wisdom? He's like, no, I want wisdom. He says, that's a good answer. I'm going to give you wisdom and wealth, which is how it works.
Correct. Yeah.
It is how it works. If you want just wealth, if you get it, it's going to ruin you.
Yes.
It will ruin you if that's what you're seeking for. But if you are seeking, let's say, just to put it in a very practical scenario, if you're looking to be the best IT public speaker you can be, better than you can be, the best one in your company, that will be a company with tremendous upside financially overall.
Yeah.
It just will.
It's going to come with the territory.
It will.
Yes.
And to say, well, then I'm not going to do it because I don't want to be wealthy. What you're saying is I'm going to be mediocre in order, because I could be less wealthy as an installer. Most installers make probably 20% of what I make. I charge like double what everyone else charges in town.
And you get it done faster.
And I do more of it. And everyone I work for when I first start working for any company, the first year, they always tell me the same thing. They say, we've never paid this much in wages ever. Or they're not paying me by the hour, but in invoices. Yeah. We've never been invoiced by one installer this much ever. And I work for huge companies.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I make a lot of money. I make a lot of money because I do it the very best I can do it.
Yes.
I could make less money.
And
by not doing it as well.
Yes.
That's the only way. How could I make less money? By doing it slower. Would that make me more spiritual?
I would say the
work
opposite.
slower?
Yeah.
Would it make me more spiritual to work shoddily, mess up stuff, do it worse, not be inventive, not be creative, not develop ways that my guys can do the same work with less strain on their back? Like, for instance, one of the things we do is install toilet partitions hanging from the ceiling. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but they hang them from the ceiling. They don't touch the floor. So you have huge steel girders, allegedly. Not always. I'll let you know right now. Don't get under them. They don't always.
Now, which ones did you install?
They have huge steel girders, real thick steel, red iron steel, up above the ceiling that we have to drill into and put bolts in, and then we hang them from those bolts, right? Real simple. And the way most installers do it is they have to make a trip out to that job site before the rooms have been sheetrocked. And they drill the steel. They get up on ladders with drills, and they drill the holes, big, thick holes, big diameter holes in the steel, 3/8 holes, and then they put the bolts in, they tighten it every up, and they have them all hanging down. And then the sheetrockers have to come in and measure and drill a hole everywhere that they
Right,
are
yes.
and install the sheetrock. And hopefully they don't get drywall mud on all the threads where you can't get a nut on
Right,
anymore.
yeah.
I mean, it's a mess,
It's very
right?
inefficient. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so you have to make, and then you go back when it's all done and you install your toilet partitions.
Yeah.
Well, I invented a drill press that sets on the floor and drills to the ceiling.
So you can get through the steel without them having to pre-drill the holes.
And they can put the sheetrock in.
Yeah.
So they can put the sheetrock in, and I drill up. See, the reason why they do it before the sheetrock is because they have to put a nut. They drill a hole, a 3/8 hole, put the 3/8 thread, put a nut on top and a nut on the bottom.
Yeah, you can't drill in without that. If you don't have the nut, you've got to find a way to.
You got to put a nut.
Yeah.
Well, now the sheetrock's in. You can't get a nut on top.
Yeah.
So I have a drill bit that drills and taps the hole all at the same time.
Uh-huh.
And it's on a drill press that sits on the ground and will drill 13 feet in the air. So you're standing on the ground and you're drilling like this instead of on a ladder
Oh yeah, where you can
by
really,
hand
you can
trying to
mess it
drill
up
through
or-
3/8 of an inch hole.
It's impossible.
And you
yeah.
drill like that, pops them right through, taps it. I got it on an I know I'm getting excited. I got it on an electronic
that's cool.
drive where it goes forwards and backwards from down here, and it's speed controlled, so you can lower the speed to tap, back it back out, bring it down, and the whole thing I can pick it up with one hand.
That's awesome.
It's
Yeah.
awesome.
And
No,
it
it's
saves
awesome.
all the labor in the back. And
Oh
all
my
that stuff.
goodness!
Yeah.
It saves you. I don't know. For each stall, probably an hour of time per stall,
Wow.
at least, and it's completely safe. You're not working on ladders. You're not getting all these metal shavings all over you, burning you.
Well, that's if you make 0 mistakes. It's an hour.
Yeah.
So if you go through and you go to the job
Sure.
before the sheetrock's in, you lay it out wrong, you drill it all wrong, and then they put the sheetrock in, and you get there.
Then
and all
they
of a sudden
gotta
it's
cut
all
a
wrong.
hole.
They got then you have to redo the sheet.
Then they have to cut a hole in so you can climb up in and do. That's what they do.
Oh, man.
So I've gone to jobs where they have other installers there, but they've already sheetrocked, and they don't want to cut a hole in and get somebody up in there to do the nuts. So they know I can do it without it. So they'll call me. They'll pay me more to
Right.
go do it easier and faster.
Yes.
So I do it easier. Takes me less time. It's easier for me to do,
Yes.
and I charge twice as much.
Yep.
Now
and,
I can.
and they're happy with it because
they're happier.
because they're saving money, not having
Well, yeah,
to redo
because
the
I can
sheetrock.
go in a room that is completely finished, painted, ready to be used. And when I'm done, it's ready to be used. They do not have to paint the ceilings. They don't have to fix anything. Everything is just, it's like I was never there and partitions appeared.
Yep.
Yeah, they're very, very, very happy.
But you shouldn't be doing that because you don't want to get rich.
Well, I did that because I didn't want to have metal shavings
Yeah,
all
right.
over me, right? And because I wanted to do
Yeah,
it well
right,
and I wanted to do it fast. And then that, because you do it that way, that will result in monetary gain. It just will.
It does. Yeah.
It does.
Inevitably
Because
does.
we live in a society that puts a premium on efficiency, on productivity, on intelligence, on all these things that are virtues. These things are all virtues, and they're all monetarily rewarded.
Yes.
What I think is Christians who are poor should be looking at their lives wondering where they're sinning. That's what they ought to be thinking. Now, they may not be.
Sure. It's hyperbolic, but yeah, I know what
No,
you mean.
I'm not
Yeah,
saying
I know
that
what
it's
you
always
mean.
sin.
Yes.
And it's not hyperbolic on this. I'm really not. I'm saying this. When I'm not doing well financially, I look at my life where I'm sinning. And I don't mean sinning like, did I lust and therefore God punish me?
Right.
Was I lazy last week?
Yes,
That
I
is
see what
sin.
you're saying.
You
Yes.
see what I'm saying? Now, it may not be. I'm not saying that every poor person is sinning. That's not what I'm saying. But every poor person should be looking at that.
Yes.
Now, we call it sin. Right, an atheist or a secularist would not call it sin. They would call it, lost time. They would call it unproductive. They would call it inefficient. They have other words. We call it sin. When you're lazy, we call that sin.
Sure.
Right. When you don't give it your 100%, we call that sin. When you don't, when you milk the clock, we call that stealing. Sin.
Yes.
That's what you ought to be looking at. You're not moving ahead in your business. As a Christian, I think you ought to look at, am I sinning?
Yep.
Am I sinning? And if you're sinning, don't tell me you're poor because you're spiritual.
Yep.
Now, if you are the best employee on the job, if you never milk the clock, if you show up early and leave late, you do everything like a Christian should do, and you're poor, and there are many cases of this.
There are. Yes.
Especially in corrupt societies.
Yes.
The more corrupt the society, the more incentivized you are to not be honest.
Yes.
There are plenty, thousands, even millions of Christians who live in that environment. And I feel for them. It's terrible. And I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about John Doe living in San Antonio, Texas. And he's poor. I'll give you odds, betting odds, that he's in sin.
Yeah. From a lazy, among other things.
Yeah. Now he'll say, well, I go to church 3 times a week or 4 times a week, and I give and I tithe and I'm doing, and I don't lust and I don't have a TV and I don't watch pornography and I do. Wonderful. Great. Great. Do you turn down a job because you don't want to work that hard? I've had people turn down work with me because they say, we've heard about you and we know you work too many hours. We don't want to work that hard. That's fine if you're wealthy.
Sure, yeah.
But if you have to be on some type of assistance, whether it be private or public assistance, and you're turning down work that would get you out of poverty, get you off of welfare, and you're turning that down, I think that's sin, personally.
It's laziness.
I think it's laziness.
Yeah.
God said, and we all take, this is another verse that I think is misunderstood. God said, you're going to work 6 days and rest 1. And everyone whines about the 1. I want to know, where are these magical people who are only resting 1 day? They're all whining. You're not going to force me to rest 1 day. What are you talking about? God is not saying you have to rest 1 day, in my opinion. My dad, this is the one who told me this, but my dad says, God isn't saying you have to rest 1 day. He's saying get up and go to work 6 days.
Yeah, right.
That's what he's
That's
saying.
the mentality, yeah.
Yes. You think that the natural state of mankind is that they want to work 7 days a week and they're being forced to rest 1? Yeah. I know that's the interpretation.
Sure.
I know that's what
I know
it's saying.
but I know what
it's
you
not
mean.
how
Yeah.
it works out in our society.
Yeah. Certainly not in America and where we're
No.
at now. Yeah.
No, we should be looking at the problem is that people are not working nearly enough, especially when they're young.
Yes.
When you're young, you should be working your butt off. What do you need time for?
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And
Well,
this is why I think
yeah.
people ought to get married a little later in life. I don't think they ought to get married real young. I think it's a mistake, especially if they want to have kids. They shouldn't have kids real young. They should get themselves established, because then when you have a family, the Bible says you have to care. Well, you have to care for your family, but it's interesting how Paul phrases it, right? He says you have to care for the things of the world.
Okay, 1 Corinthians 7.
Yeah. That's the commandment,
Yeah.
to care for the things of the world.
Yes.
You cannot care now for the things of God. You have to care for the things of the world because you're married.
Yep.
And so, in my opinion, and I'm a traditionalist, so I believe a husband, although I'm not against a woman working at all, not at all, but I approach things from a traditionalist standpoint.
Sure.
And I think that
The man should be working.
I
Whether
think
or not
that
the
marriage,
woman's working or what.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't even have a problem with the woman working if she has a higher paying job and the man
Sure.
staying at home. I don't think there's anything spiritually wrong with that
Okay.
at
Sure.
all. I think that it is difficult. I think marriage is designed by God. I do not think, even if you think it evolved biologically, even then it doesn't matter. It's the same issue. But I think it's designed by God, and that the traditional roles of men and women were designed also by God, and they fit with marriage. The psychological parts of marriage do not work easily. They can work. They don't work easily when the roles are reversed. There's been documented, this has been studied, there's a lot of research on this. There's a lot of problems that enter into marriage when the traditional role is reversed.
Sure. I see what you're saying.
There's a lot of issues. It's not that it can't be, and there are people that do it, and great.
Right.
If my wife could make more money than me working, economically, I would say go work. And if we have kids at home, I'll watch the kids. I'll be the house husband or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Stay-at-home dad or whatever they call these people. I would. I mean, I honestly would. It'd be like, because to me, economically, I'm not going to try to prove some point I'm a man by making less money.
Right.
And my wife is going to sit at home and prove she's a woman by not making as much money. And so we're going to live in relative poverty relative to where we could be.
Yeah.
Because of what? Because we have some view of that's not even scriptural. There's nowhere in the Bible that says this. The Bible doesn't say it has to be done this way.
Sure.
Now, typically, you're not going to find that to be the case. Typically, it's going to be the other way around because women have to bear the children, and that is just wreaks havoc on
Interesting
their
economic
financial.
problem.
Oh,
definitely.
it just destroys them financially.
Yes.
It really does. I mean, there's exceptions.
Yes.
But general rule is bearing children is death to a woman's career.
It's very difficult to come. Possible and
Well, they
has
can
been,
have it, but
sure.
they will never be. And I'm speaking in generalities, not
Yes, that's right.
acknowledging there's exceptions.
Yes.
But in general, a woman will not be what she could be if she's going to have children in her life.
Sure.
She just won't get there. You don't have that much time. And the time you need to have are the time your child. You can't say, well, I'll have my kids, and when I'm 50, I'll start my career. You're never going to get there.
You're not going to get there.
You're never going to get to where you could have gotten, which is why Paul says, speaking of the spiritual thing, but it applies across the board. If you want to be everything you can be for yourself, or in this case for the Lord, don't marry. You can't get there if you're married. You are accepting a huge reduction in possible productivity if you get married.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Like what I said at the beginning with the preaching class.
Yes.
I wouldn't have been
That's
able to
exactly
do,
great. That's exactly right.
I wouldn't have been able to go. I mean, that was a 35-minute drive down to the south side.
Right. And then we were
back.
there for like 2 hours or something.
That's a whole Thursday night shot on top of a Wednesday, on top of Sundays. I mean,
Yeah.
on top of,
No, exactly. That's why I think like ministers, like missionaries, they single, if they want to be missionaries and they know that young, when they're single, they need to go to a Bible school. And I think they should be going to Bible school. I think they should be going to a seminary, actually. And I don't know which one. I'm not recommending one because I'm not sure what the seminaries are teaching.
Studying and
Sure. And I'm okay with a in-house, in-church seminary if it's a real Bible school, which I don't know what that would look like. So I'm not pretending I would know what it is. I do know that any of the ones I've been to are not real Bible schools, in my opinion.
Okay.
My opinion, including my own Bible school.
Yeah.
Okay, which I'm wearing my Bible school T-shirt right now that I did. So I'm including myself. I don't think I'm anywhere near teaching what needs to be taught to ministers. I don't even know what that would look like. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that anyone else knows. So I'm not necessarily saying, you have to go to Dallas Theological or you have to go here. Sure. I'm not recommending one. Maybe they're all terrible. For all I know, they're horrible. Okay? Probably not.
It's the point about studying and trying to get good in your craft, whether there's
that's right
false
and
teaching there or whatever.
Exactly,
it's about that. So.
It's exactly right that we need people who are trained in what they want to do. I mean, I could make the same case for doctors.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm practically a surgeon. Practically. I went on Amazon and I bought a box of scalpels. I have it in my bathroom because I had plantar warts. I went to a doctor, a podiatrist. He cut them out. They came back like a week later.
You saw what he did.
So I saw what he did. Yeah. So I bought a box of scalpels and I did it myself. And I cut them out and they've never come back.
So you're like the world's greatest surgeon. You should probably operate.
I am practically. It's how you got to know how to sell this. I'm practically the world's greatest surgeon.
And you're 100% on your surgeries.
100%. That's right. So who's going to come to me? I mean, you don't need that training. Those medical schools are corrupt. I mean,
they teach you all this overhead that you don't really need to know. So
right. I mean, could we go to medical schools and find that stuff is being taught that's detrimental? Sure. Do you want a doctor who's been to medical school? Yeah. Probably. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I feel the same way now about ministers. I think that we should have gone to a school. I really do. I think those that want to dedicate their lives to that should be going to a school of some sort, and it ought to be much more formal than what we've been doing.
It should be where you're sacrificing your time to do it, I would think. Well, because a big problem with going with missionaries that I kind of seen with younger ones, they go, but they don't know any real sacrifice until they get there, and then all of a sudden, they're kind of...
Well, one problem I see, and this will go back to the financial discussion we're having, that I see with missionaries, and I put myself right at the top of that heap. So I'm talking about myself. Sure. And if anyone thinks I'm talking about them, well, then that's your conscience. I'm talking about me. The problem I have with missionaries, me, I want to keep emphasizing that. You don't believe how many times I got to repeat that because people will still take me out of context, is that we go down there and we don't actually know how to be successful at any job. Right? We're not sending successful people down there. This is a problem. Sure. This was me. I mean, I was not successful. I was 16 when I started that church in San Luis Potosi. Mm-hmm. I mean, I didn't know anything. I certainly didn't know what it was to have a job. I didn't know what it was to go to work every day on time. Even though I grew up in a very strong work ethic with my dad. I mean, I worked from the time I was 8 in construction all summer long. Mm-hmm. I was carrying trusses at 12 years old on the 3rd floor here in San Antonio in the summer heat. So, I mean, I worked, but that's not the same thing as being responsible of getting yourself up, going out and finding a job, selling yourself to an employer, all of these things. Sure. That's not the same thing. Let me just go through this real quick. So
sure.
They write back on that question we were answering. It says, I think I agree with you in general. I guess my argument would be that most people could be corrupted by money and focus less on God. So let's say I'm not living in debt, but I don't have ambition. Is this a sin in your mind? Oh, that's a different question. Sorry. So the first question they ask is, and I'll let you answer this. That they agree with us in general, but they think that most people could be corrupted by money and focus less on God.
Once you have the money. So
well,
maybe,
that I guess just in general, yeah. So what do you think about that?
I would say I understand what they're saying. I guess from a practical sense, and we talked about it some, but my parents, didn't matter how much money they made, they gave above and beyond, to the Lord. And I see my focus has been, as I've certainly made more money, more than doubled my salary from when I started 10 years ago. I actually give we're giving higher percentage than what.
Oh, absolutely.
And so when I do that, it, for me, in a very practical sense, it helps me have that level and that humility of the money's not going to corrupt me. In fact, as I get more money, I'm going to give a higher percentage to the Lord because I can live within my means and do that.
Yeah.
And that helps keep me grounded in spiritual things and not fall victim to that lust, the lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh.
I know that these are obviously anecdotal answers to this,
sure.
And we ought to give a more generalized one, but it is important. So I would tell you anecdotally, I am more engaged in the ministry now that I'm working 50, 60 hours a week and making a whole lot more money than I've ever made in my life than I ever was poor.
Yeah, because you're financially invested in the things of
that, and because I have the money to do so. So if
sure.
I have the money to do things in the ministry, I have the money to take off time, right?
Yep.
And prepare a message, and I'm not worried that I'm going to starve to death by doing so.
Yeah.
And so it's made it where I can invest a tremendous amount of time and a tremendous amount of money in the ministry.
Yes.
I mean, when we did the church with Freeborn Church, my coworkers, they were having some financial difficulties at the time. So they weren't able to do as much as they would have liked. I was experiencing a tremendous boom economically, so I was able to pull up that slack, which we worked
sure.
together, and they pulled up slack in other places for me. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad, but it was
it works both ways. Yeah,
of
definitely.
course. And there may be a time when it'll reverse itself,
yes,
right?
Certainly.
But I was able to do things that I could have never done before,
yes.
and trying to do them. Now you may think that I wasted my money. Somebody might think I wasted the money on it. That it was a waste of time or whatever. It may be. Who knows? God will judge that. Yeah. I'm not saying that having the money made me successful in God's eyes in the ministry, but I did a lot of effort in the ministry.
Yes.
My intention was to honor and serve God,
yep.
and I was able to do so much easy. Does money? So the general question they're asking is,
can money corrupt?
Can money corrupt people? Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Certainly. Yes.
So much so that you can be corrupted by money you do not have.
Yes. Yeah.
And I would tell you that the 20th century has told us that you're more likely to be corrupted by other people's money than by your own money.
Yes.
And I would say that the love of money could be more accurately applied to loving other people's money than a love of your own money.
Yes.
That's how I would tell you.
Yeah, in the form of debt.
In the form of debt, in the form of socialism, in the form of envy, in the form of judgmental, sanctimonious, judgmental, pharisaical, sanctimonious. I'm going to add up all the adjectives here. Pharisaical, sanctimonious, judgmentalness of what other people have. This is corruption. When a Christian, in their mind, and many people will not want to admit to this, but I know I did it, so I'll admit to it. And you can all pretend you don't do it. Everyone else can pretend you've never, ever done this. I've done it. Where I look at someone who's successful and think, I bet they're corrupted by that money. Mm-hmm. I bet they're not really as very spiritual. they should give that money to the God, and they should live a spiritual life. And it's in my mind.
Sure.
I'm looking at that. That is corruption.
Yeah.
What do I care what someone else has?
Yes.
What do I care? Why would I look at somebody with any type of judgmentalness or any type of and we're not talking about someone who's like, going to Vegas and hooking up with hookers and doing drugs. We're talking about somebody in the church who's giving a lot of money, who's participating, let's say, in the open meeting, is
Sure.
that the case? Or some ministry. They're doing youth ministry. They're doing old folks and whatever. There's rich people that are doing
Yes.
ministries.
Yes.
And you look at that and you think, but they're rich. They got that money. They love that money. And you're thinking that. You may never say it, but there are a lot of Christians who think this way.
Sure.
That is money corruption. That is corruption.
Yeah. It's not corruption on the person who has the money. It's the
Yes, that's
the
what I'm
envy of
saying.
it, yeah.
It is I think other people's money is a greater source of corruption historically than your own money. I think Paul said that if you didn't work, that you should repent from that. You should get a job so that you can have money so that then you can give.
Yes. That's very clearly in the Bible.
Yeah, and according to the Bible, if you're going to have a job, then you should do the very best you can do at that job. And if you're going to make money, you should make the most money you can legitimately, honestly make.
Yes.
Working for less is corruption also. I believe this faux spirituality, pretending you're spiritual because you just, I don't have money. It's like, let me give you an example from my own life. When I was in Querétaro, we lived in that house. I think it was the house that you went to in that little down that little alley.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that house came up for sale. The guy wanted to sell it. He needed money real bad, I guess. So he was selling it, and he was selling it for like $20,000
Okay.
at the time, which was like the price of a new car.
Yeah.
Which is crazy cheap, and that is prime real estate, and I knew it. But I was so infused with the mentality. I could blame that it was given to me, that it was spiritually genetically passed on to me, right, from my forebears, but I won't. I won't say that. I won't say that. I'll just say it was my fault. So I was so infused by this mindset that we are not of the world. I'm satisfied with a cottage below. I have a mansion over the hilltop mentality, which is, I hate that song. But anyways, terrible, terrible song. But I was so infused with that I didn't buy the house.
So you let someone else buy it, basically.
Someone else bought it and rented it to me, and I paid them in rent what I would have bought it for. Because I thought I was being spiritual. I wasn't being spiritual. I was being stupid. That was financially stupid. It was not spiritual.
Yeah.
And too many Christians have this idea that they need to prove their spirituality. It's like nowadays we have these virtue signalers. Well, in Christianity, we have these spirituality signalers. They got to signal to everybody. They got to put on their spiritual blinker. Blink, blink, blink. I'm making a spiritual turn here. I'm being spiritual. Look at me. I got my spiritual siren on. Woo, woo, woo. Watch me. This is what I think a lot of this is. And I think it's very detrimental. I think if Christians would be taught economics and finances more properly, I think they would be living much better lives, especially debt-free lives. And like you brought that up, is debt. Mm-hmm. Debt is corruption of money.
It certainly is.
Now, I'm speaking in generalities.
Yes.
I am not talking about those people whose their daughter or son is born with some ailment, correct, and they have to do whatever they can do to try to keep. I'm not talking about that, right? Yeah. I'm not talking about medical debt. I'm not talking about unavoidable debt. I'm not talking about the economy crashing and all of a sudden you're just trying to scrape to feed your family. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Home Depot credit cards, Amazon credit cards, consumer debt, car payments.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
I'm talking about consumer debt. Debt that you could do without.
Yes.
That is corruption. If you have debt, then and if you've ever been in debt, and you're thinking you're spiritual because you're poor, no. You're corrupt. And that goes to the question. So Tekel says, so let's say I'm not living in debt, but I don't have ambition. Is that a sin in your mind? What do you think?
I'm thinking, why why aren't you living to the best of your ability? Why aren't you doing whatsoever your hand find to do it with your might? And we talked about kind of the repercussions of that, which are typically monetary or financial, especially in the workforce. And I do think lack of motivation or vision, it says, I'm going to not quote that verse because I'll take
The
it
lack
out
of the vision, people
Yeah,
perish.
that's what I was going to. But
That's a good taken out of context verse. I like
it
that.
really is.
Nice little proof text there. Good job.
But I think that lack of motivation and, like you said, the result of the lack of ambition is monetary. And so in my mind, I feel like it's like what you said, which is you should probably investigate yourself. You should examine yourself and your spirituality.
I agree. I know I would go so far as to say that all exceptions aside, yes, it's sin to not have ambition. It is sin to not have ambition. Now, you don't have to have ambition for everything, right?
Right.
So you say, well, I don't have ambition for installing toilet papers. Okay, fine. Go do something you can have ambition for.
That's right. Yeah.
Don't do something you're going to be mediocre at.
Yes.
Not because you won't make money. This is where we get to where
Yes.
people who don't have money don't understand it. They think, well, you're saying don't do that because I won't make enough money. No, that's not what I'm saying. Not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying you need to do something you can do with all your might.
Yes.
You should not be doing something you don't do with all your might. So there's two ways to fix that. One is the easy way. Go find something where you can
Yes.
put you can lean into it. Go find it. Or do what I do. I don't like what I do. I hate what I do. But I do it with all my might.
Yeah.
And I do it with all my might because I say I am doing this for Jesus.
Yes. Amen.
That's why I'm doing it. I am going to be the best I can be for him. And anything I can get out of this, I'm going to serve him with it. So when I go to work, if I'm not wringing everything I can out of it, I'm shortchanging Christ. I'm shortchanging him acutely on the job site because I'm not being what I think to be a positive testimony in that way. And I'm shortchanging him chronically in that I'm not going to have the resources when it comes time to be able to do something that he would have me do. I mean, how many times have I had an opportunity to do some ministry, but I was financially unprepared? And I look back at my life and say, I wasted easily that much money. And I could have been prepared for this.
Yeah.
I could have been prepared to do this ministry, to accomplish this end for Christ, and I can't do it. And I got to go around asking other people to do it or to help me do it or to give me money for it. And I can't do it.
That's right.
Because I wasted it. And so that's the problem with not having ambition. And so, yeah, I would say you're in sin. I would think you need to get yourself out of gear. I think lack of ambition is a number of things. I think it's ungratefulness. I think that it is laziness. I think that it is short-sightedness. I think that it is waste. When you don't have ambition, you are wasting your time and your energy that you will not get back. You are not redeeming the time. If you want, whoever you are, Tekel, if you want a pragmatic, real-world definition for redeeming the time, in one word, it's ambition. That's what it is. When it says redeeming the time, that is ambition. That's how I would tell you one word. Brett says seminaries are too narrow and biased. They have a cookie-cutter mentality. Their doctrine is fixed. In other words, established. That may be. I mean, that's the same thing you could say about colleges and universities. And while I'm not a proponent of university for the sake of university or college for the sake of college, but I am a proponent of education. And that includes colleges. And in cases, you have to know why and what you're going to get out of it, and I think you got to make the economical way of it, right? And the same thing with seminary. Yeah, there's a reason for its rigidity. There's a reason why colleges are rigid. Yes. And it's not because they're saying there's no other way to do something or no other way to learn. They want a good college is going to teach you a rigid system, but their intention, I think, is for you to go out and innovate with the information they've given you. But I've tried to do freewheeling type education. It doesn't work.
Yes.
You got to have a curriculum. And the moment you write it down in a book, it becomes fixed and rigid. I mean, that's the
definition of education,
right?
In that sense,
yeah, and that's true.
And what I would say, my father-in-law, he went to one of those seminaries that was very closed-minded about things. And of course, he's innovated and gotten out of the independent Baptist movement because of, a lot of other things.
Mm-hmm.
But he's innovated on top of the things, but the base things that he learned from there, how to deal with people, how to run a church, like the basics around those things are imperative for the success of the church. Like it's those little things, those details are really important. So that part of the education was vital to starting churches successfully, just from like a logistics standpoint.
I would agree. I mean, you kind of could look at it like, say, like an accountant. If you're hiring an accountant, you want one who's very innovative, but you want one who is also very classically trained, because you don't want to go to jail.
Yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I mean, there is a lot to be said about a rigid, very fixed curriculum for a young minister who needs discipline more than he needs innovation at that point in his life.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that.
Yeah, and again, I want to be clear to everyone. I'm not saying that any seminary out there is good. They, for all I know, they all may be terrible. Sure. I don't think so. I think there's got to be some good ones, but I do think that the concept of this, that missionaries should be going to an actual school, and not just missionaries, pastors should also.
Sure.
If nothing else, a preaching school, a real preaching school. Yeah. And none of us have ever been to a real preaching school, ever, and we should.
Your school was preaching. It was,
I try, but every time I revisit it, I think, wow, you got to go to the restroom or what?
No, cramp.
Oh. Nolan stands up, and usually it means he has to run to the restroom. Little boy can't hold his water. Every time I revisit this, I realize a lot of things. Like, for instance, so here's where I'm at on the preaching school thing. And I think you'll find this interesting. I think we ought to be teaching people how to read out loud.
Yes.
So I heard, I don't know if you ever heard a Timothy Keller message. If you know who Tim Keller is.
I've heard the name. But
okay, he's a Presbyterian in New York. He started a Presbyterian church in New York, Manhattan. Okay. From scratch. And I love it. I love the guy. Anyway, great preacher. Tremendous preacher. I'm going to give you another name in a minute who's even a better preacher. But anyways, great preacher. Mm-hmm. And I think, and I'm not sure, I've never been to his church, but I think he has people do the reading for him. So like they'll get up and they'll read the portion of scripture. So it's that type of a church, more of an established church. Sure. So they have a scriptural reading, and they have someone who does that. And it sounds like he's in Manhattan, so he has like these actors, voice actors. Okay. Now they're not doing like voices, which I don't like, especially not in church.
Sure, yeah.
Right? But they're doing the emotion of the voice.
Okay.
It's just like better
night and
than
day.
the sermon.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I listened to this. First time I heard it, I'm listening to his sermons, and it's different people. Then he has this one who's very obviously trained voice actor. You can just tell. And he reads the story of Jesus having his feet anointed by the woman, and then Simon the Pharisee criticizing him, and then Jesus responding. He reads that, and it's like, that was enough sermon for me. It's amazing. Wow. It's just like, and he's not like doing women's voices. He's just
it's just narration, but it's reading it with
like if
emotion,
if he was on stage presenting it. Yeah, and it just comes alive. It's amazing. And I look then at how I read the Bible, and I think this is pretty typical of most preachers. And it's just dull. It's like read it, and even if you're trying to read it well and not just hurry through it, it's just kind of dull. Yep. And I listen to him, and it's like, wow. Yeah. And so now I've been trying to read like that. And I think that's something that could be taught. It's not the main thing, but a very important thing to say, hey, try to read it so that people get something out of the reading itself.
Yeah, you get something out of the text. Let the text speak, like you said. Let that be it could be the whole message.
Right. Yeah. I mean, he reads it, and he's just like, wow, I bet that is how they said it. Yeah. It's like, I can't do it, and I'm going to try just so you get an idea of what I'm talking about. But really, it's going to be so sad. It's going to be so pitiful. But, it's like Simon says, he thinks in himself, if this man if he knew who this woman was, well, he does it with I can't do it, but he does it with like an under the breath voice.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know what?
Yeah.
You can picture it in your
Yeah,
head, right?
yeah.
Where you,
Someone knew, yeah.
if this man knew, if he knew who this woman was, he does it, but it's loud. It's not.
Yeah, right.
You can hear it, but it sounds like it's under the breath.
Yeah.
I don't know how he accomplished it. It's amazing.
No, he put a lot of thought and effort. Well, and
a
he's trained.
lot, and
Yes.
he's went through the passage, and now that's what I do. Well, I got so excited, right, that I took off work.
Oh no! Here we go.
Yeah, no, I did. I took off work and let Nolan go to work. I took off work for like 2 days, and I sat in here, and all I did was read out loud the same chapter over and over
Oh no!
and over.
Which chapter?
Well, a couple of them, but
Okay.
but I would read the same one over and over. So I did
Sure.
that
Okay,
one
okay,
because I like tried to mimic him first, right?
Yeah.
That's how I normally do it. It's like find someone who does it well
Yeah.
and
And
just
emulate,
do it.
sure.
Yeah, just imitate it and try to pick up on what he's doing. And so yeah, I did that, and so I read that one over and over and over and over. Then I did like the prodigal son, and the narrative
Sure.
ones are easier.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, they're the ones
That's
that
a good way
have
to
more
start, yeah.
emotion in, and he puts all that emotion into it. And so, and then when he reads, he says, then Jesus responds to him and says, Simon, tell me something. And he goes, tell me, master. He does it you're like, what? I bet it is how he said it. It was so good. You gotta. I'll get the
I'll
link
have
and
to
I'll
look him
send
up.
it to you.
Timothy Keller. Yeah.
I'll get the link and I'll send it to you because that is not all of them are this way. He has a variety of people reading, and they're good readers, but they're not that good. This guy is exceptionally good. And you got to listen to it. I think you listen to it. I think it'll just put goosebumps on you, and you'll be there like reading out loud, trying to figure out. I want to read.
Yeah.
And then when I try to do it at church the first time, well, then it's like you take that big deep breath because it's like you're committing. It's like
right.
It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
it's
once
like
you
you
start,
can't go
you can't-
halfway,
yeah.
right? It's like gymnastics.
Yeah.
If you go halfway, you're gonna break your head.
Yeah, right.
You're gonna break your neck, right? You have to commit all the way. So then you're like got to be all in, and you're like. It's like jumping off a cliff. It's like, ah!
So how did it go?
Not too well. I still broke my head and my neck.
It went better than what you.
It went better than what I
than
thought.
What you're saying, yes, it did. I remember it. You used the time where he gets interrupted.
Oh, that was the prodigal son.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went ahead and preached the prodigal son. So I read it as the prodigal son comes back, the son
sure.
comes back, right? And he has a speech prepared, and he starts into his speech, and then the father starts speaking. Well, instead of stopping and then saying, and the father said, I omitted that from the text. I know I took it out of the text.
I know, right? Yeah.
And I just had the father
just
interrupt the son.
Sure, yeah.
And I actually did the interruption. Did I do it good?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you did.
It came out as an interruption. So I had the son, and I had to really work on that because in my mind, I had to be thinking I was going to continue speaking.
Right. Yes.
And then bring in the father as an interruption.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like hold it right there. That type. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really how it went down.
Right. Well, I mean, that's what it is. He had a speech prepared.
That's
you know
right,
that.
yeah.
You already know what he's going to say. He says part of it. And then he says, and then, the narrative says, and the father said, I just omitted that and just said what the father said.
Yep.
And it worked. I think it worked. Yeah. That one worked.
That's cool.
It is. And it just makes so then the reading of the scripture becomes not only something they get out of, I get more because now I'm thinking as I'm reading it, what might be his mindset here? Is this an angry response? Is this a compassionate response? Is this a frustrated response?
Yeah. Like why is he interrupting?
Right.
And then you can get into he knows where the son's at in this particular story. And he's like, I know what you're going to say, and you're missing the point.
And it doesn't
here.
even matter to me. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. I love you
right.
too much. I don't care.
That's right. Yeah.
And yeah, you can have different ways, but then it makes you analyze all that. And it's not
Yeah.
that I'm rubbing the crystal ball saying I know what Jesus was feeling or whatever. It's about saying what could he be feeling? What would that imply to what's being said?
Yep.
To me, that's all valid.
So
And
you do like emotions.
I do. I'm just not good at them. That's why I don't read well like this. You might do real well. You should look into this. You might have a whole nother calling.
He's gonna make me do the reader. He's gonna make me be his professional reader.
Yes, I'll get you over there to be my reader. I would, if I could do it, I'd be like, man, that'd be a great ministry. If I had someone in the church who could read that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, we're gonna read a chapter every Sunday.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, not a chapter, but a story. We're going to read what would they call a passage. We're going to read a pericope. got it all wrong. Pericope. We're going to read a pericope every Sunday. And you know what a pericope is?
I don't know what that is.
I know what that is. No, a pericope is a story
Okay.
or a text. So it doesn't matter where it starts and stops.
Sure.
Like the adulterous woman, that's a pericope.
Sure.
Right? The prodigal son, that's a pericope.
That makes sense.
Whatever embarks that narrative and bookends it when
Sure.
it starts, that's called a pericope. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to read one every meeting, and we're going to have this reader, and he's going to really practice it. And he, like me, when I was doing this, whenever I preach, I still do it. So when I preach narratives, I don't do it in the epistles as much.
Yeah.
It's not as easy, and I don't do it as much
Right.
there. I try to read it well. I try to figure out what
Sure.
the flow is and try to make the meaning come together. But what I do any time I preach narrative, I spend as much time now practicing the reading of the text as I do preparing the sermon.
Sure.
I mean, I read it over and over and over and over and over. And I make notes. So where I read, I use a digital.
Emphasize this or
Yes, I put on there sad or angry or
interrupt.
whatever.
Yeah, right.
Interrupt. Yeah, exactly. Interrupt and notes
That's
on
cool.
it. Yeah, and I note because if not, I'll forget. I'm in the reading and I'll just forget. I got to see that. And then I try to build that emotion into my voice. And that is hard.
Yes.
It is hard to sound a way you're not actually feeling. That's tough work.
It's
I mean,
acting. I mean,
it is acting.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. It makes me when I did that, I'm like, okay, now I understand why they get paid so much.
Yeah.
This is hard work. This
Yes.
is brutal work.
It really is. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, no. So yeah, that's what I started doing with that in the preaching.
Yeah. And it goes back to your idea of school, which is even if everything else they taught you was wrong at the school, if they could teach you how to do this one thing, like read narrative,
Yes.
or even like we talked about structurally designing messages and having a point, having something to say, those are things that are invaluable that you don't need to know a certain doctrine or believe a certain way. These are the types of things that I think would be valuable in
I
going
agree.
to a type of school like that. Like I said, I was not a very good preacher until I had a little bit of discipline
Yes.
to my messages.
And I would say that what I was taught as a young man helped me to get to where I am
That's
now.
right.
Even though I think it could have been much better. It could have
Sure.
been much more complete. It was very haphazard. I think they would admit to that. The people who taught me, it was never formal. They
It was
never
informal,
sat
yeah.
down. It was very informal. I learned as much by just watching them, but that I appreciate that. That
Yes.
was a school of a sort, and I do appreciate it.
Definitely.
And it gave me a push up that
Yes.
helped me get further. I mean, it gave me some momentum,
Yes.
right? I wish it would have been more, and I think we should be doing more now.
Yep.
And it's not to and one thing that happens is, and I've said this before in other contexts, and it gets taken really wrong, and they think, well, you're just destroying everything saying everything that happened before is garbage. No,
Not at all.
not at all.
It's just improving
We
upon,
did
yeah.
what we could at the time.
That's right.
We did what we knew. I'm not blaming anybody for anything done to this point at all. I'm thanking them. Everybody, in my personal anecdotal experience, everybody who had any part in my ministry to this point, I'm very grateful for everything they did.
Yes.
That doesn't mean I don't look back and say, wow, if we had the knowledge we have now, we could have done that.
Yes.
I do acknowledge that. That isn't not to say they should have done that. You
Right.
can't.
And it's not ingratitude.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like
Right.
saying, like President, what's his name? The one before FDR, or one before Hoover, Calvin Coolidge.
Mm-hmm.
Calvin Coolidge's son was a tennis player, was playing tennis at the White House, in the tennis court, I think it was at the White House, gets a blister on his foot and dies. And if we would have had penicillin at that time, they could have saved his life. They should have saved his life.
Mm-hmm.
That's that reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
People make that jump that's what I'm
Sure.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I would have known what I know now when I was giving you classes, I would have given you much better classes. Therefore,
yeah.
my classes were garbage. That doesn't
It's not
follow.
true at all,
No,
yeah,
that's not
right.
logically true. Now, if I continue doing what I know could be done better because I've always done it that way,
Yeah.
that's
more
the
of a
problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And what I think and what I see is for you to get to where you're at and the classes that you taught, you were 25 years in the ministry when you did this, and you gave me a lot of that wisdom, which I took when I was very young. I was 25. So I've got 15 years to basically
Yes.
get I'm hoping by the time I'm 40, I'm a better preacher than where you were at 40.
I hope you are too.
And,
yeah.
And so that I can build and make the next person behind me even better. I think that's the mentality to have.
That's exactly. And that you'll innovate things that me or someone else maybe hasn't, and maybe nobody has. And you'll innovate something, and those who taught you will learn from those as well. Right? Yeah. That's how I distinguish between cults and true teaching. Yeah. It's not necessarily the content that distinguish them, because you can be cultish and be a Christian and have good doctrine.
Yes.
So what makes you cultish, one of the hallmarks of cultishness, in my view, is that cultishness never promotes the student beyond the teacher. The students are always dependent on the teacher. That's cultishness.
Yes.
Right? That's the one, a lot of times in our group we have an animosity, an antagonism for teaching. It's like teaching's bad. We don't like schools. We don't like Bible schools. All this idea of teaching. People should, the Spirit teaches them and God gives it to you. And what can I tell you? It's that view. And I just disagree with it wholeheartedly. I think it's completely wrong, completely unbiblical. It's false spirituality in every way. But I understand where they're coming from at the same time. I get their point. And the point is, you see cultish type teaching, and that teaching's no good. Because all that teaching does is tell you, I'm brilliant, and I have brilliant revelations, which you will never have. You must sit at my feet for life as I reveal to you things that you will never figure out unless I tell them to you.
Yes.
That's not teaching.
That's not teaching.
That's like if I was teaching you 2 + 2 = 5, and 3 × 3 is 29. That may be brilliant thinking, but you will never figure out the next step.
Yes.
Where do you go from 2 + 2 = 5?
Yeah, no idea.
No idea.
Yep.
I can only tell you that. That's the problem with that type of teaching. We need teaching that is 2 + 2 = 4, and 2 × 3 = 6, right? And 3 divided by 3 is 1. This is the type of teaching, because then you can start and you see the pattern. Like, okay.
Yeah. Now, how can I build on this?
I can build on that.
That's right.
And when I build on that independently, I will come to the same answer you would have come to, and anybody would have come to who had the ability to build on this. And I don't need to sit at your feet for life to learn something.
And I think this goes, and you see this in just talking about technology, but any type of innovation throughout history. The reason why we're evolving so quickly from a technology or just modernization is because you have information readily available, but it's teaching people. It's not this mentality. It's I can build on something that you already have. And I think that needs to apply and should apply. And it has to some extent in the spiritual world too, where you can get infinitely better at saving. And we're talking about souls being, we're talking about souls being saved. Correct. Your message and your delivery of a message, for instance, it can be the difference between someone getting, I really do believe that. And your preparation. You don't just haphazardly throw things off the cuff and expect people. You want to put, like we talked about, all your effort. And if you can find ways to get better and continue to innovate, then why wouldn't there be more, in this case, spiritual fruit toward from preaching messages or enhancing that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're about out of time, I guess.
I'm sure we are.
I wish we could go longer. We'll get you back in again.
Sure.
There's other things we want to talk about, and I enjoy talking to you. Appreciate you coming out to do this.
Likewise.
And you're going to give me some links from your ministry.
Yes.
Give me your church link in a minute. I'll put those on the show notes. And check out what Adam's doing, especially with the youth. If you have youth, are all youth invited to this? Is this something that anybody can get into? Like,
you're talking about
sign
the boot
up?
camp?
Yeah, your boot camps and stuff. Is there?
Yeah, if we do it next year, we'll
obviously it's
not
closed,
this year.
but when it's open.
It's anyone. Yeah, we raise the money for it, so anyone can. It's 7th to 12th grade, and so anyone can sign up and do it. Yeah, it's free. We put it on. So.
Oh wow, I like that. Okay, and do you guys accept donations from other churches and stuff that want to? Okay, well I would definitely want to help with that, so I'll get with you on that. But look, if you got youth that you would like to be participating in this whenever they're able to resume. I would strongly encourage. I think it sounds great. I think anything we can get our youth into that is biblically based and is not giving them a secularist worldview and a worldly worldview, it is what we need to be doing. Mm-hmm. And not just Christian youth, right? I mean, we want it's all youth there so they can find Christ. And many times young people will ignore their parents and yet find Christ at a camp. And that's great wherever they can. I mean, I think it's
Definitely.
wonderful. So I'll get the links and we'll put them on the show notes here and you can look it up. I appreciate all of you that were listening today, those that you posted questions. I hope we answered them as best we could. You can contact me at podcast@freebornchurch.com, podcast@freebornchurch.com, and you can send me things. If you have questions for Adam, you want some financial advice, he is a financial wizard, a financial wizard. Just if he tells you to invest in Washington Mutual, you might not want to do that.
Do not invest in Washington Mutual.
Yeah, do not do that. But other than that, he can give you a lot of help there. And I admire your financial prowess. I really do. And kudos to how it's going at work. I hope it continues to go well for you.
Thank you.
And we appreciate being here. And God bless you all. See you next Saturday. Is it still on?
Yes.
Next Saturday, who is it? I should tell him.
Your sister?
Yes, Liz Thompson, a.k.a.
Yeah.
Betsy. Moo.
She's Liz now because I
She's
worked with
Liz.
her. So
Yes,
she's Liz to me, so.
yeah. But she says she doesn't like Betsy. That's what we always called her because it says it's a cow's name. But I'm going to call her Liz for the entire podcast because that's the kind of person I am. Liz Thompson will be here next week. She has issues that she wants to take up with me. She doesn't like my take on college. So apparently she's going to set me straight. So that's going to be very interesting. So I'm looking forward to that conversation next Saturday at 9 with Liz Thompson. And we have people lined up all the way through all the way through the month of June every Saturday. Some interesting conversations coming. All right. Now you can go off. All right. Bye.